Wang Ling was born with power that could rewrite time and space itself. From the moment he walked out of the womb on his own, he was already beyond gods. Yet despite having limitless strength, he wanted only one thing in life: a quiet day and a bowl of crispy ramen noodles. That illusion of peace ended the moment an S-rank frog calamity attacked the city and made him drop his meal. In that single moment of anger, Wang erased the monster with one casual move, then chose to hide his power forever and live as a normal student. Years later, on his first day of high school, two senior bullies immediately targeted him. They mocked his seemingly low spirit force value and demanded he hand over all his money. Before Wang could react, a streak of fire crashed down from the sky. Sun Rong, the academy's most popular student, descended with divine grace, sending the thugs fleeing in terror. She promised to protect Wang, unaware he needed no protection. Later, the principal gathered the student body for the Spirit Force entrance exam, declaring that only the strongest would enter the elite class. A student named Kuk Xuan stepped up first. Inside the testing chamber, he faced the target, a spirit incarnation of the giant Frog King. Terrified by the beast's aura, he faltered. He threw a weak punch, but the impact only proved he was destined for absolute mediocrity. One by one, students failed miserably until Chen Ko stepped forward. He unleashed his dormant energy, striking the beast with enough force to score over 900, securing his elite spot despite being knocked back. Sun Rong followed, rushing the beast with incredible speed. She landed a devastating blow, repelling the monster and shattering records with a score exceeding 2,000 points. Wang Ling was the final candidate. He planned to suppress his output to appear average. However, as he stepped into the water, the frog spirit sensed a familiar, traumatic frequency. It remembered the original body's destruction, the day it tried to incinerate the mage leader, only to be annihilated by the wind pressure of Wang's kick for interrupting his lunch. The beast trembled, recalling the sheer terror of that moment. Paralyzed by the memory of that specific background music, the frog froze. Wang pretended to struggle, feigning a difficult battle. But as he closed the distance, the mere passive energy from his arm destroyed the testing equipment. The signal died. The smoke cleared to reveal the frog unconscious on the floor while the scoreboard glitched, unable to display a number high enough to quantify Wang's truly infinite power. The entire school watched in stunned silence as the system completely failed. However, he did not even physically touch the frog. And when the frog started disintegrating, Sun realized something was off, while Wang noticed it was playing dead to avoid feeling his pain. The examiner congratulated him on being admitted into the class of the elite. When the first class began, the teacher showed them the spirits that they would bring out from other dimensions using their force level. Chen decided to show off his powers. After everyone clowned on him, Sun summoned a stray dog but wondered just how much power she needed for an actual spirit beast. The teacher wondered why Wang's lonely self was just sulking in the corner, so he decided to also give it a try. But when he felt all the aliens surrounding him, a giant explosion went off and the frog from the exam wondered why he was seeing his ugly face once again. To save everyone, the teacher cast Sun's dog toward the frog, transforming him into a puppy. Sun then asked him if he liked peanut butter. However, Wang knew how this would end and tried sneaking out of class. After all, he had been alone his entire life because even when his father waited for him to be born, he saw the nurse leaving the exploded delivery room in tears. However, his son was not dead, and he saw Wang had walked out of his mother's womb like a titan. Every single day, he would sit and read the minds of his parents as they would constantly lie to each other and bothered him with all their arguments. To save their marriage, he used his infinite brain cells to think of all the billion outcomes in this world and decided to wed himself right in front of them. This was how his accident saved his parents' marriage. And as days passed, he was capable of manipulating gravity itself. But by the age of 6, he had already gained the ability to destroy calamity-rank monsters. So his father began experimenting on him until he developed a secret seal to hide Wang's limitless powers. But even then, it was not enough to prevent him from nearly breaking the bowl by just touching it. So his mother would constantly give him her golden orbs to suppress his spiritual powers. And even though his parents loved him, they wished to find a way to help him live an ordinary life. Because even for simple things like blowing out his candles, he burned down their entire home. And when he was 10, his friends nearly touching him knocked them all out cold. For the first time in 10 years, he realized that his parents had been actually struggling to give him a good life. So until they found a way to suppress his powers, he decided to avoid anything that would stir up his emotions, except for ramen noodles. At school, he saw that ramen was on sale today, and a man bought the entire store, saying that he would gladly give them all they wanted as long as they vote for Sun Rong as president. All of the guys were angry that she would stoop that low for votes, but Wang told her that he would give her 5 of his votes for the 5 crispy ramen noodle packs, and she wondered why his plain face was the only one helping her. After receiving the noodles, all the other guys realized that they could get free food by just voting for her. But Chen swore that he would beat her, seeing how everyone fell for her trap. She cast her art of seduction to control everyone's minds, but realized that Wang was missing from among them. The only thing left over was his golden pill, as he wanted to pay her back for the noodles she gave him. When class started, Sun noticed that Wang was still unaffected by her spell, but even after trying to overpower him, he wondered if she ever got the pill. As he signaled for her to give him the golden pill back, she thought he wanted her to eat the golden sphere. So she decided to eat it to increase her spiritual powers. At that moment, he realized she was doomed and her body started feeling like it had fallen from the sky. The spell of seduction broke away from everyone, and the teacher called Sun to come up and demonstrate her art of seduction. But as she walked forward, she slipped on a can and nearly fell. But Wang had to show off that he was the protagonist of this anime. However, he was not interested and just dropped her body to the floor, breaking the seduction spell off everyone. Before the class was over, the teacher announced that Chen Kao was the president of their grade. And as Wang walked away, he knew that those gestures were definitely a secret technique of unleashing some overpowered abilities. Later that night, Sun wondered why Wang's plain face destroyed her spell after supporting her at the shop, but wished he would leave her mind already. The following morning, Chen had brought his giant cauldron for the pill refinery test and thought that Sun would definitely fall for his giant cauldron. However, his friend knew that he was definitely overcompensating for something. She arrived in her limo, somehow accompanied by an entire band serenading her entrance along with 30 bodyguards. With a single glance, Wang saw she had been seduced by him, so he used all of his gigachad energy to come and brush her face. But he broke all laws of physics and snapped the status effect out of reality. They wondered if this was the new red pill guru method he was practicing, and Sun collapsed after the Riz Lord destroyed her ability to stand. At class that day, the teacher speedran the way to create a golden pill. The entire class remained frozen, utterly clueless regarding how they would pass this impossible alchemy assignment. Chen began frantically shoveling dirt, metaphorically preparing a grave to bury Wang Ling, while Wang simply utilized a standard kitchen microwave to refine his raw ore. Hao questioned how he could ever hope to compete with such absurdity, yet he proudly displayed his own superior magical furnace. Sun Rong gazed at the high-tier device with envy, wishing she could possess something of that caliber one day. However, the moment she directed her attention toward another boy, Chen's jealousy spiked, causing his unstable cauldron to violently explode directly in his face. The humiliated simp fled the room in tears. With the disruption gone, the teacher announced a mandatory 7-hour wait for the ores to finish refining. The moment the instructor exited, Wang's spirit dog prepared to devour Hao's cauldron. Wang Ling managed to intervene just before absolute disaster struck. Suddenly, the frog leaped out the window, forcing Hao to chase it down, but this was merely a calculated ploy to lure the ugly boy away. When Hao turned back, he found Wang Ling standing directly behind him. Terrified by the stealthy approach, he begged for mercy. Meanwhile, Chen continued running, weeping not just over his romantic failure, but because he knew his father would execute him for destroying the sacred family treasure and failing to secure first place. Back at the scene, Wang Ling departed with the furnace, but Hao, confused why Wang was stealing it, aimed his paintball weapon at him. Wang calmly insisted he wanted no trouble. Hao demanded an explanation before he blasted Wang into an isekai world. Just then, Chen's mind fractured completely. He hallucinated Sun Rong running toward her new daddy. Inner demons erupted, branding him a pathetic loser as his crush walked away with Wang. Determined to eliminate the evil separating them, Chen charged back into the fray. Hao declared it was over for Wang's worthless face and fired his poison weapon. Wang dodged at the last microsecond, and Chen inadvertently swallowed every drop of Hao's sticky liquid. Hao screamed in sheer horror at the accidental intimacy. They dragged Chen's twitching body back into the classroom, wondering if he would survive ingesting that much lethal poison. Realizing they faced expulsion if he died, Hao begged Wang to create an antidote immediately. They scrambled to gather ingredients and fired up the cauldron, setting a 4-hour timer. Panic set in when they remembered the instructor would return in only 2 hours. To make matters worse, the frog returned, attempting to eat the cauldron again. Hao released a magic seal to cast the beast aside. However, when he checked the furnace, they realized the frog's mystical fire had miraculously accelerated the refining process, saving them all from certain failure. They decided to put Froggy down, forcing the spirit to release his energy. Wang questioned why the creature kept such power hidden. Froggy explained that his ability to manipulate timelines would inevitably destroy the entire world, but both of them knew they could use it to their advantage. Once the antidote was complete, they forced the poor dog to ingest the poison to test the pill on him. They watched the reaction closely, showing absolutely no concern for the animal's safety during the dangerous and highly volatile procedure. They tried feeding Chen the pill, but Hao heard the instructor's heavy footsteps, so he ran outside to try and delay them. However, the teacher was not interested in his tactics. When she entered the room, the teacher was ready to see whether his furnace actually refined any spirit orbs. Hao begged her not to expel him. She saw that he had actually refined one of the orbs, and Hao realized that Wang sacrificed his own pill for his dear friend. But just then it was his turn, and the teacher screamed at him for creating explosives. Seeing how Wang replaced Chen's orb into his microwave and sacrificed his own grade for his friends made him realize that Wang was the greatest friend in this world. But he did not realize that Wang actually did nothing, because when washing the furnace the pill had simply been there all along. They had cooked it without either one of them knowing. His microwave was as useless as he was, but nothing was as useless as the cauldron carrying Chen except maybe for Chen's face. By the time he woke up he saw that his furnace was repaired and Hao told him to thank Wang for all his hard work, sparking a bromance between the two new best buddies. When school was over the next day, Sun began approaching her useless, ugly, and pathetic prey, but instead of being the hunter she was actually the one being hunted. Without any hesitation she asked Wang if he wanted to go on a date tomorrow, but Wang stared at her with the same worthless face as always. At the same time the hunters were given the order to shoot Sun, but as soon as they shot, Wang deflected their shots back with a single stare. The poor assassins fell down. The teacher called Wang out of the class and she wondered why he was avoiding her. At the same time, the snipers decided to fall back at their boss's command and Froggy saw everything from a distance. Sun thought that Wang said yes to her date when he was just saying yes to the teacher, so she was excited to go on a date with him tomorrow. The student body questioned how his repulsive, worthless mug secured a date, for if a wretch like him could acquire girls, why did every female flee from them in sheer terror? A seductive bunny girl sensed that events were becoming truly interesting. Inside the main office, the principal ordered the teacher to depart right away. The principal introduced himself as Ju, the witness who observed his capacity to vanquish the giant frog all those many years prior. He dropped to his knees and begged Wang to become his honored master. However, Wang unleashed 50% of his memory erasure magic spell. Once he was finally solitary, Froggy informed him regarding the assassins. As he slept, he endured recurring nightmares regarding Sun's absolutely crazy behavior. Yet when he rose from bed wearing his bunny suit, he spotted Sun waiting outside the window with her full army, and he wished that he would simply perish right then and there. Neither of his parents would typically agree to this arrangement, but they believed their son would never actually bring a living girl home. Consequently, they begged him to carry some protection. His father questioned how Wang was conceived when he always utilized strict protection, but his mother told him not to worry about specific details. Checking his phone, he saw friends wishing him the absolute greatest night of romantic plot development. Without even realizing it, his parents shoved him outside where Sun stated he could do anything he desired in the back seat. As they drove away, the assassins continued tailing the vehicle. Sun informed him that she was taking him directly to the Heavenly Paradise Carnival grounds. That entire castle was constructed for Sun to spend time there with her beloved, and she confessed it was her first time visiting this specific location. Wang wondered why he was stuck with her ugly self, but she laughed because his face was even worse. Upon arrival, she told the guards to leave immediately because Wang was stronger than all of them combined. Yet 5 minutes later, all guards were neutralized by the assassins standing before a large prophecy wall. Sun dragged him to discover the future of their relationship, and the assassin fired a bullet at that instant. However, Wang slowed time to locate the bullet and caught it with his mouth, launching it back at the gun and sending the man flying backward. She wondered what neurological disorder he possessed, but he flashed her memory away. She paused, and she forgot seeing anything at all happen. The assassins wondered why these guns possessed much more recoil than CSGO. As they glided across the steel while being followed, Wang exploded the assassins trailing directly behind them. Wang attempts to procure a gift for her, but the situation spirals. He causes a stack of heavy logs to collapse directly upon them, wiping her memory to hide the error. Just as they prepare to board another ride, the assassin leader snaps his fingers. A massive stone boulder plummets from above, crushing the ground, though they survive unscathed. By the time night falls, the shadowing assassins are left baffled, cursing the inexplicable misfortune plaguing their mission. Sun asks Wang if he would accompany her on the Ferris wheel to watch the fireworks display. He agrees to the request, internally hoping this ride will finally grant him a fleeting moment of peace alongside her. However, the assassins pursue, hopping into the gondola behind them. Zhuge senses his master is in grave peril and immediately signals for backup. As the couple ascends high into the air, vibrant fireworks begin detonating across the distant horizon. While Wang is momentarily distracted, the killers aim guns at him and Sun, forcing the pair to sit intimately close together. Despite the lethal danger aimed at his head, Wang feels relief that Sun's incessantly loud mouth has finally been silenced for a few seconds. Sun begs the gunman to release her friend. Hearing her call him friend, she breaks down crying, pleading for Wang to flee and save himself. Instead, Wang stands, eyes gleaming with power. He unleashes a telekinetic force, violently hurling one comrade out of the cabin. When the remaining killer begs for his life, Wang ignores the plea, summoning a colossal phoenix from the sky to strike the man down instantly. Amidst the explosions, Wang extracts a promise of secrecy. He utilizes his full power to seal Sun's memories of the night deep within rather than erasing them. It is the first time he has ever desired for someone to know his true self, marking the genesis of their new relationship. The fireworks continue to illuminate the dark sky in the distance. The next day at school, the teacher warns Sun that the hitmen who attacked her in the park survived and are concocting a new plan. However, when Sun claims she has no memory of the attack, Xianxia arrives, boasting that he personally eliminated the threat. The previous night after the couple returned from the Ferris wheel, Wang watched Sun depart before casting a spell on Xianxia, implanting false memories that he defeated the hitmen. Xianxia presents a letter revealing that assassins intend to invade the school grounds to capture Sun. With a sharp snap, the school gate seals shut as soldiers barricade the premises. Inside the schoolyard, however, a golden phase ninja named Zhu Fang bursts out from the earth. He knocks out a security guard with a rubber chicken before brutally pounding another. In the corridor, a golden phase ninja named Sighing arrived, blasting the opposition straight out the window with a powerful gust. The instructor evaded a lethal chalk projectile that punctured the concrete wall, cracking the solid structure like a heavy sledgehammer strike. Looming over the intruder, the teacher declared he would crush the assassin beneath his heel like a common, insignificant insect. Elsewhere, Wang received a notification regarding a prize, a complimentary pack of crispy noodles. Intent on claiming his reward, he exited. Back in the hallway, the teacher wove around attacks, though the ninja remained determined to prove his lethal worth in combat. Sighing hurled a weapon, then another. Activating a spell, he triggered the projectiles to expand rapidly and detonate in violent explosions. The teacher effortlessly crushed a spiked sphere, mocking Sighing as a worthless, disappointing amateur for bringing such useless toys into battle. As the instructor advanced, the ninja cast a toxic burst to cover his retreat. He fled, slamming into the door just as Wang stepped out, ignoring the collision to walk away. Meanwhile, Zhu Fang neutralized another security team. Attempting to extract, he encountered the school dog standing quietly in his escape path. He attempted to pet the creature, but it bit his hand. He flung the animal away, only to realize his spiritual energy had been completely drained. Instantly, his physical form withered. The dog transformed, revealing a massive green frog towering directly before his terrified, widening eyes. The beast charged a blast. Zhu Fang attempted to flee, but his spine snapped under the pressure, allowing the frog to instantly vanquish the intruder. A third assassin, Zhu Giant, infiltrated the grounds, gathering immense energy to demolish the entire school premises with a single strike. Relying on an invisibility cloak, he believed he was undetectable. However, Wang walked outside to collect his noodles, casually informing Zhu Giant that he was as visible as the noon sun. After city heroes scanned the package, Wang secured his prize. Returning with the noodles, he heard Zhu Giant desperately claiming that Wang never actually saw him. Wang dismissed him as a useless loser, adding the insult that the ninja's face smelled distinctly like urine. Humiliated and desperate to save face, Zhu Giant unleashed a massive spell that rippled across the entire school grounds. His war hammer oozing with raw power, he raised the weapon high and brought it down hard upon Wang. The weapon shattered on impact. The assassin realized his face truly did smell like urine before collapsing to his knees in defeat. As Wang began dragging the defeated assassin away, Xianxia hurried to his side, insisting that he would not forget him this time. Wang responded by casting a new spell, altering the man's memory to make him believe he had successfully executed the ninja. But throughout the following week, Wang pretended to remain sick, lying in bed all day to avoid school, reinforcing his image as a lazy, useless kid. When his friends arrived to see him, Sun attempted to administer a massive injection to cure him. Terrified, Wang told her he had recovered and hurriedly scrambled out of bed. Before long, they sat at the table together, deciding to take a spiritual power test to measure their abilities. Chen stepped forward, deciding to give it the first shot. As he summoned his spiritual force, a powerful light bulb appeared before them, serving as a measure of his total spiritual strength. Meanwhile, located in another high school, a group of students were taking the same tests. As Tang Jian summoned his own spiritual force, the system scored him 1950 and the students dismissed him as a useless loser. Consequently, their leader Tang Jian decided to show his own ability. As he drew his spiritual force, a powerful breeze blew across the room. His number continued to rise on the system until he was raised to the first position, and the students began cheering for him. Back at the house, Guo Hao only managed to summon a pathetic tiny ball. He tried hugging the ground as punishment, but Chen physically restrained him. Sun suggested taking her test another time, fearing she might wreck the house, but the boys were eager to see her powers and persuaded her. By the time she was done, the system raised her to the second position. When it was Wang's turn, he realized he had no time to prepare. He thought of using his littlest spiritual force to keep his full abilities hidden. However, as he began to summon his powers, the force of it nearly blew everyone away. He barely managed to teleport the miniature sun he had inadvertently created outside the Earth's orbit to prevent a catastrophe. By the time he was done, the system revealed his score was uncountable and decided to put him in first place. At the same time in the opposing school, they noticed Wang had taken first place on the test board. Staring at the impossible numbers, they concluded the system must be suffering a glitch, as they could not believe the score with their own eyes. As the group dispersed, Wang overheard Guo plotting to breach the mainframe, intending to hack the system and artificially inflate his humiliatingly low score to a respectable level. That night, while Guo attempted to hack the database to sabotage Wang, he decided to summon a mystical password formation scroll to help. When the scroll materialized before him, he cast a detection spell throughout the room, hoping to reveal the hidden access code within. When the ritual concluded, he realized the password remained invisible to his sight, and he angrily hurled his book aside in frustration. Wang intervened, noting the password was merely 8 stars, and Guo's incompetent hands actually managed to unlock the secure computer terminal. At the rival academy, Tang Jian and a cohort had also breached the secure school network. However, they failed to locate the target score, discovering that a new hacker had already infiltrated the system long before them. Simultaneously, Guo noticed Tang Jian holding second place, recalling that this specific student used to mercilessly bully him just a few years prior. Suddenly, the system alarm triggered, and the students frantically attempted to quit the session before they were discovered by the admins. A group of students entered the room, realizing Tang Jian's name had been altered on the system. Assuming he had done it himself, they mocked him, declaring that he was truly a worthless, pathetic loser. A few weeks later at school, the teacher told the instructor he intended to send Wang and his friends to a major swords competition with the opposing school. They had suffered defeat for 13 years in a row, and the teacher hoped Wang would be their good luck charm who would finally help them to win the elusive gold medal. However, when the instructor told them they needed to send 5 students out for the competition, Zhuoye said the dog would fill the 5th position, wondering how the beast would compete without a proper humanoid form. Zhuoye commanded the beast to turn. It transformed into a faceless human, but returned to dog form when they were too disgusted to look at its twisted face. However, she still thought the dog would be disallowed from competing since it did not partake in the mandatory spiritual force test. Hoping to rectify their blunder, Zhuoye wore the armband on the beast and promised to free the frog spirit if it managed to win the entire competition. To prove his determination, the beast scored 5,000 points and was instantly raised to second place. That evening, after school was over, the boys told Sun goodbye and began to head back home. That night, the teacher gathered the students to formally announce that they had been selected to represent the school at the upcoming swords competition. She instructed everyone to prepare their spiritual swords for the fight. The students immediately began displaying their special spiritual weapons. When they finished, they realized that Wang had not revealed his own sword. He descended the stairs into the basement to retrieve the weapon, but the spirit of the sword emerged from the box. Wang panicked and quickly dipped the blade back inside the box to suppress it. The following day, he finally decided to reveal the weapon to his friends, but they judged the blade as far too short, convinced it would be weak and ineffective in battle. When the teachers arrived, they announced that the team would reside at the opposing school until the contest began, granting them ample time to train. At that moment, the bus arrived, and they started heading inside. Meanwhile, the leader of the ninjas observed them from across the street and began to trail the bus as they departed, seizing the chance to finally capture Sun. Inside the transport bus, Wang's spirit attempted to escape, but he physically forced it back down, terrified that the ghastly sight would scare everyone off the vehicle. Upon finally arriving at the grounds of the opposing school, the group was welcomed by teacher Li Xuan and several of her competing students. However, because teacher Li Xuan and the instructor were known mortal enemies, Zi, the opposing director, deliberately ignored her rival, turning to Sun to say she was delighted to meet her instead. The instructor retaliated viciously, calling Zi's students useless little trash who were far too twisted for their own good. Zi immediately thought of repaying these harsh words with violence and blasted a beam of light straight into Wang. At once he collapsed to the floor, pretending to be severely hurt, but his spirit appeared before him once more, urgently warning him about the state of his amulet. Before he could react, the amulet detonated, erupting into the most massive fiery blast anyone had ever witnessed. The inferno surged high toward the heavens, blasting everything in sight with a ferocious wind, while a mighty flame continued burning with intense heat until the energy finally vanished from the amulet. Weakened significantly from the massive eruption, Wang asked the spirit why he had not warned him earlier. The spirit replied that Wang had silenced him from talking while they were inside the bus. As Sun and the instructor rushed to help him, they began to wonder what could have triggered the eruption. Even Zi was confused at the sight of Wang becoming sick, because her blast was only meant to test his abilities, not harm him. After Wang was carried off into the school building, Sun tried joining him, but Tang Jian stood in her way. He arrogantly asked if she remembered his face from their past encounter, but she dismissed him immediately, thinking he was simply too ugly and disgusting to ever remember. When the arrogant boy refused to leave, Sun attempted to punch him, but her fist was caught by Tang Jian's partner, Yishi. Tang Jian told Sun that they intended to eliminate Wang completely before the competition began. At that instant, Wang's body began to burn from a mysterious, sudden flame. Zai appeared, binding him down with a restrictive, tight wrapping spell. Angered by the sight of this assault, Sun drew her sword. As she tried to strike Tang Jian, the teacher caught her blade, telling her to control her volatile emotions immediately. Inside the medical room, when the staff tried to treat Wang, they discovered that he had mysteriously vanished from sight. Meanwhile, Wang was trying to find his way out of the school grounds. He used a flash trick to suppress his amulet, but feared that his powers would erupt at any given moment now. He called his father, telling him that his power seal was starting to break apart fast. Immediately, his father readied himself and took off on his flying light sword. Wang continued through the school, hoping to find his way out very soon. At the same time, his friends made their way into the large school gym. Sai welcomed them again, explaining the rules of the swords competition, stating that the team with the highest score would be crowned the ultimate winner. When Guo pointed out that his ugly team of bullies were also a man short, a wave rose towards them, nearly drenching their clothes as a mysterious figure appeared right before them. In a flash, he whisked to Sun and offered her a rose, but she told him that the rose was as ugly as his horrendous face is. Hoping to impress her, Bu Fang said that Zi hired him to crush their team, but was willing to switch sides in exchange for a one-night stand. With Chen having desired a one-night stand of his own, his anger began to grow. He tried punching Bu Fang but was blown away. However, he decided to return to the fight again. Bu Fang punched him away, flew at him with a kick, knocked him around like a useless doll, and pounded him hard to the ground. Chen rose through the smoke, determined to fight once more now. As he oozed with a flaming aura, he charged once more, but Bu Fang dodged him and caused his hand to vanish before throwing him away. Luckily, Wang caught him, and Chen realized that his hand had been restored in that instant. So he flew forward with a punch. But Wang stood his ground and merely walked away from him there. When they returned to the school, Wang revealed that he intended to find some limited crispy noodles because he could never have enough of it. Liu Yan, the lethal leader of the assassins, watched from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to launch her ambush on the unsuspecting group from the darkness. Bu Fang appeared behind her, aggressively demanding to know exactly who she was and why she was there. She lied, claiming she belonged to the school's humble cleaning department. He thought she was the worst liar the entire world had ever seen, wondering if she dropped straight down from the ceiling. Still, he thought she was the new Mona Lisa, offering her red roses for a one-night stand. She smacked them away, calling him a broke loser who deserved absolutely nothing. Looking at the score, he told her that her face was so ugly he would rather stay alone forever than sleep with her. She punched him with an invisible blow, saying he would never recognize true beauty even if it trucked him in the face. Delighted to take on the challenge, he began to rise with a terrifying dark aura, ready to squash her with his great and terrible power. As he summoned dark energy to pulverize her, she squeezed it, making it vanish into nothingness in an instant. At the same time, Wang was returning with his beloved crispy noodles when he found Liu Yan about to annihilate Bu Fang. Before anyone knew it, she captured him, tossing both of them aside effortlessly after binding them in immortal ropes. As a mysterious old man appeared beside her, she wondered if they should throw Wang down the roof, but the man pulled Bu Fang instead. Wang's amulet tried unleashing from the chain, and the sword spirit warned Wang about impending destruction as lightning flew across the sky and fierce wind blew violently through the surrounding trees. However, when Wang failed to regain consciousness, the spirit screamed that free noodles were being served inside the school. After hearing that, Wang immediately returned to his senses completely. The old man gave Liu Yan a piece of Bu Fang's hair as she looked to infiltrate the school with a disguising spell. Inside, Zhu and the instructor debated over whose face was uglier. Suddenly, Bu Fang entered the faculty office stating Wang had been abducted, but they did not realize this was actually Liu Yan, who had transformed into Bu Fang using the powerful disguising spell. On the rooftop, the man told Bu Fang that Liu Yan merely intended to borrow his physical form for a few hours before finally executing him. Desperate to change his luck, Bu Fang offered to join their faction and asked to be released. But the old man told him that he was simply too moronic for his own good. However, when he chose to insult the elder as a spineless weakling incapable of facing off against him on his absolute worst day, the man cast a piercing light directly into the ground before him. Bu Fang panicked completely, realizing his entire plot was now nearly fried just like bacon. He had not realized that the old man was an overpowered spiritual infant who could vanquish him in a single snap. Simultaneously, Bu Fang continued his nonsense story regarding exactly how he managed to escape, while Liu Yan forcefully dragged Wang far away from him. Hearing these words, Zhu Yi revealed that Liu Yan was the leader of the Shadow faction currently attempting to eliminate Sun completely. At Tang Jian's command, Yishi began scanning for the presence of any other spiritual forces hidden within the school. After she discovered their whereabouts, Sun's security detail snuck up on her and bundled her away, determined to keep her safe from the threat. The head of security insisted Sun's safety was their priority and that her annihilation would render them all useless and without a single paying job. However, Sun returned, having knocked out the useless and moronic security. She declared that Wang was the love of her life and she could never abandon him for all the money in this whole wide world. She said she did not care at all about Liu Yang, but only cares to have the love of her life by her side again because she was starting to dream about their wedding together right on the rooftop. As the man was ready to end Bu Fang, the coward began screaming for help like a hopeless, useless child who had already wet his pants. The man raised his foot and shook the building with a heavy stomp, leaving Bu Fang unconscious. At the same time, Sun and her security began charging towards the building, watching as Wang was raised high up on a wooden cross. As the security flew closer on their light swords, they tried evading several blasts and one tried to unleash his magic but was blown to bits instantly. Before the others drew closer, a light beam vanquished them, creating flaming balls in the dark sky. Looking to reveal his own power, the old man directed a light towards the skies that spread into a great circle and began summoning a mighty army of yellow knights. But as they started charging forward, Sun cast a direct light that instantly destroyed the circle. As she stood midair with swords around her, she slashed the knights and tried parrying the flaming swords. But the old man thought she would soon meet her doom. Before long, she was caught in a mighty force and began falling towards the hard ground. Wang snapped back to reality, the prediction fading. Having watched Bu Fang fall to the lower floor, he freed himself but arranged it so Jui received credit for the rescue. When support arrived, an officer asked Wang if there were any missing people involved in the incident. Wang lied, claiming everyone was accounted for. He intended to keep Bu Fang isolated until the system disqualified him from the competition. To ensure this, he ordered his sword spirit to keep the unconscious boy hidden away safely, until the cancellation was officially and permanently finalized. However, the next day, as they prepared for the event, Wang spotted a Bu Fang in the queue. Clearly, the plan had gone south. Once the instructor announced the start, students began vanishing into the crystals to enter the arena. Wang's father rushed in, desperate to alter Wang's seal before he was transported into the game world, but realized he was too late. Wang had already disappeared into the digital realm before his father arrived. Inside the system world, the opposing team noticed Sun and her group had scattered across the island, aiming to acquire the strategic altars first. However, realizing Wang's presence was undetectable, Tang Jian volunteered to destroy him and sped away. As Tang Jian sprinted through the dense forest, Guo Hao emerged from the shadows and decided to track the speeding enemy down. Believing he could win, Chen heard the system announce the enemy was seizing altars. Needing to even the score, he rushed toward his objective. Suddenly, a cut opened on his face as a mighty wind scattered the leaves. Arriving at the tree, he wondered how to claim the altar, but Yishi appeared behind him, claiming the capture point first. Chen readied for battle, daring her to strike. Instantly, he was trapped inside a glowing magical web. Under Yishi's spell, he began violently punching his own face and smashing his body repeatedly against the hard ground. Simultaneously, Bu Fang managed to evade a spirit beast, summoning lightning before charging at the spirit dog with a heavy blow. Upon realizing his spiritual force was critically drained, he narrowly dodged the beast once again and decided to retreat immediately to safety before he lost all his remaining powers. Elsewhere, Tang Jian found Wang on the ground, thinking his duty of claiming the altar for his team could not be easier. However, Wang managed to stand up slowly. Tang Jian drew his sword, ready to execute him on the spot. But as a spell flew toward him, he slashed it away, revealing Guo Hao standing defiantly right before him. Determined to finish this, Tang Jian attacked Guo Hao, and they began clashing swords in a violent, sparking tussle of strength. Sun moved swiftly to claim an altar, sensing her team's increasingly desperate position. She narrowly evaded a swinging blade, countering by hurling her own weapon outward. The steel transformed midair into a shimmering sword spirit just as Tang Jian materialized directly before her, flanked by his own formidable spectral avatar ready for immediate combat. Tang Jian mocked her, urging Sun to abandon her band of failures. She answered with a concussive blast, commanding her spirit to charge forward. She ascended as a hydro dragon, but Tang Jian's spirit slashed through the liquid form instantly. As Tang Jian reformed, Sun realized the enemy had successfully captured yet another vital altar located nearby. Sun demanded to know how Tang Jian monitored the entire island with such terrifying godlike precision. He smirked, revealing they had hacked the system before the competition began to exploit the site's surveillance feed. Simultaneously, Sun received a crushing notification that Chen had been defeated and his altar seized by the ruthless opposition forces. She recalled her spirit into the blade, gripping the hilt to charge Tang Jian. Before she could strike, Tang Jian unleashed his cryomancy, freezing the churning water into a vast sheet of jagged ice. With time expiring, Sun flashed forward, shattering the frozen surface, but Tang Jian's spirit summoned a gale force wind that violently blasted her backward and away. She recovered, launching a projectile before engaging in a furious sword duel. She flipped and vaulted over the ice, driving the battle onto a bridge with a relentless onslaught. Suddenly, the ice detonated around Sun. A doppelganger, fake Bufang, materialized before her, summoning a dark orb charged with lethal energy to eliminate her permanently from the ongoing game. A catastrophic wind swept the island, signaling a greater enemy's presence. Sun utilized the chaos to escape. Unopposed, Tang Jian drove his blade into the altar to claim it. However, a glance at the scoreboard froze him. Sun's team was rallying, systematically retaking the altars across the map despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Earlier, Guo and Tang Jian had fought to absolute exhaustion, leaving Guo drained of spells. Tang Jian advanced, kicking Wang aside for his perceived uselessness in the fight. Enraged by the disrespect, Guo dug deep to unleash fresh spells, but Tang Jian slashed them aside with sheer contempt, mocking his futile, desperate efforts. Guo remained relentless, casting magic as if his life depended on it. His passion ignited Wang, whose dormant power suddenly erupted violently. Seeing an opportunity, the beast rushed in to drain the energy and restore its strength. However, Wang had exposed himself intentionally to bait the creature into a dangerous trap. Wang anticipated this liberation. With the spirit dog consuming his negative energy, his suppressed power detonated. He initiated a fusion with the beast, aura flaring. Tang Jian, oblivious to the danger, mocked Wang as a loser, laughing at his perceived incompetence. Wang advanced silently. With a casual flick of his finger, he shattered Tang Jian's blade into dust. A mere tap on the shoulder followed, launching the bully violently into the stratosphere, removing him from the battlefield for good. Obstacle removed, Wang secured the altar. He immediately relocated, arriving at the next objective where he discovered Chen unconscious. He roused his ally. Disoriented, Chen woke in a panic, mistaking Wang for a hostile combatant and bracing for a fight. Wang ignored the defensive posture, stepped past him, and drove his spirit sword directly into the stone mechanism, claiming the point without a single word. Chen celebrated the victory prematurely. System blared an alert. The opposition had recaptured a previous node. Wang calculated the tactical necessity. They needed simultaneous control of all 5 altars. He erupted in spiritual flame, preparing to utilize godlike speed to tag every location at once. Sun interrupted him via the communication link. She reported a critical failure. Guo had abandoned his defensive post after being ambushed by 2 enemies, leaving a dangerous gap. Chen demanded to know why Guo fled. Guo responded with self-loathing, calling himself a useless glutton unfit for combat. Sun cut through the pity party. She outlined the only path to victory: coordinate a simultaneous seizure of every altar. Once captured, they had to defend the points for a few critical seconds until the system declared them the winners. Sun and Guo mobilized toward the next target. Sun utilized Guo's spherical form, rolling him like a bowling ball before launching him toward the cave entrance. Guo crashed down and immediately taunted the defender, hurling insults about the man's father. While Guo drew aggro, Sun stealthily flanked toward the altar. The defender recognized the distraction and pivoted to intercept her, but Guo fired a disruption spell to check his advance. Disaster struck. Guo stumbled during the cast, sending the spell careening into Sun, knocking her back. As she scrambled to recover, Tang Jian materialized, screaming at his partner to secure the energy pulse. The enemy sprinter dashed for the objective. Sun raced to beat him there. Guo summoned massive earthen boulders to block the path, but the opponent smashed through the obstacles, drawing his blade. Sun conjured a volley of energy swords, launching them to intercept the runner. She attempted to capitalize on the chaos, but Tang Jian's sword spirit manifested instantly. The spirit slashed outward, shattering Sun's weapons into fragments before they could connect. Outmatched and unable to breach their defense, Sun made the difficult tactical decision to retreat. Wang voiced the desperate command aloud, proposing they return to the past to alter the future. He immediately summoned a colossal force over the sky, refusing to listen when the spirit beast warned that changing the future violated the laws of nature and that he could lose all his powers as a consequence. As Wang merged his essence with the beast, a powerful light descended from the sky, initiating his dangerous time-warping journey. Inside the new world, Wang arrived at school for his first day of the school year, but was stopped by 2 aggressive seniors, exactly like in the beginning. When they asked for protection money and pushed him away, Wang thought that Sun would come to his rescue again, but Chen violently punched away a senior bully and introduced himself. The second bully tried knocking him but was blasted backward by the stoic Guo. After Guo introduced himself, Wang tried offering his money, but they declined it. Inside the class, Wang thought Sun was about to look at him and stood excitedly, but the girl was not Sun. As they returned home from school, Wang saw Sun inside a car and began to chase it down. By the time they arrived at a stoplight, Wang hurried to look inside the vehicle but discovered that the girl was not Sun. Wang had not realized that his spell had created a whole new alternate world. As he drew power from his lights, rocks began to ascend into the air. Deep inside the underworld, a man introduced Sun Rong to the demon queen. After realizing she was Wang's lover, she hurried away and promised to return her to life immediately. As she activated her device, Sun's spirit flew into her body and was fully restored once more. In the new world, Wang tried telling his friends that he has been on this spot before and with a special girl too. Chen told him to quit dreaming because he was too ugly to ever have any girls. In the real world, Wang's spirit told Sun that Wang had created a new world, hoping to reunite with her and that their entire Earth would vanish if Wang continued draining the planet. He suggested that Sun try to rescue him immediately before it was too late. Wang rode on the Ferris wheel with his friends but was deeply sad that Sun was not by his side. In the real world, as Sun readied herself for the rescue, the spirit transformed into a powerful sword. As she rushed forward, she flew high and began to dodge all the energy blasts coming her way until she managed to successfully stab Wang, freezing him and breaking his enchantment. Seeing the flower in his hand, he told his friends that he had to return to his reality. Just then, the enchantment broke apart, and Sun was able to pull Wang outside as they finally reunited once again. Returning to the past, Chen faced off with Bufang, tossing his sword by his side. However, when the system announced that Sun's team was starting to take the lead, Liu Yan grew tired of hiding and burst out to end Chen right on the spot. But a sudden force from Wang eliminated her, so he stuck his blade into the altar and they were declared the winners. With their victory, Sun began hurrying towards Wang, but a group of reporters appeared to ruin their parade completely. After Sun had rescued Wang from his enchantment, he realized that he had lost his preparing ability, so the beast told him that it was his punishment for trying to destroy the world. Wang wondered how they could return to their own world. The dog told them that they could only reverse the time, but said that Sun would lose her memories of this event. Sun thought it was a worthy sacrifice to restore the world and told Wang that she would always stay by his side forever. Shortly, Wang's father arrived with the amulet and decided to seal Wang's powers and with it his emotions. By the following day, Wang had withdrawn into his usual silence and was starting to hate his life all over again. When the instructor arrived, she told the students that they would be having another spiritual force test and that any student who wasn't in the intermediate phase would be expelled from the elite class entirely. Afraid that Wang would fail his own test, Sun hurried to him and told him to release all his energy inside of her so that he would reach his intermediate phase. But Chen was about to end his life. However, Wang thought he needed to save his strength and vanished from the class. While inside the restroom, Guo began suggesting that they create foundation pills to enhance their spiritual energy for the test. Afraid of failing like his useless father, he began to beg Wang for his support, so he agreed to help him. When the test was about to begin, the instructor decided to give the students a show of his own spiritual energy. Immediately, dark clouds began to spread above him, and a powerful thunderbolt descended on him, blowing a wind across the field. When the dust began to clear, the teacher told them that the only way to pass the test was to survive the thunderbolt. After the first student was scorched by lightning, Sun feared Wang would suffer the same fate, noticing he was nowhere within her sight. At the same time, inside the class, Guo was secretly cooking the foundation pills. When he realized the instructor was heading straight towards them, he began to panic wildly. So Wang doused him with a bucket of water. By the time the instructor arrived, they decided to pretend they were drying their soaking wet clothes. But she began to scream at them, threatening to kick them out of the school if she caught them cheating. Guo told her that they had fallen into a pool and were merely trying to dry up their clothes. However, she thought that Guo was a useless liar and decided to look for herself. As she began approaching him, the dog lunged at her, but she knocked it away. However, when she looked inside the furnace, she saw filthy, crusty socks within and refused to know what was hidden inside them. With the boys alone again, Wang wondered where Guo had hidden the pills, so he told him that he had swallowed them. At that instant, he began to burn with a great power as the pills were starting to digest inside of him. As his powers grew out of control, he began to expand like he was about to blow up. But Wang struck him and he flew across the room, deflating like a punctured rubber balloon. By the time he woke up, he discovered that he was being summoned for his test. So he hurried off, hoping to utilize his cheating pills. However, he soon realized that the pills had been fully ruined and had lost their enhancing ability. Luckily, as he tried unleashing his power, his spiritual energy drew a powerful lightning that he managed to resist. When it was Wang's turn, the teacher gave him a helmet, expecting that he would be burned to ash. But as Wang summoned his own power, a great cloud began to stretch across the yard, and a thunderbolt descended on him. As the cloud began to stretch over the city, a terrible wind blew everything in sight. With the city about to be destroyed, the teacher tried pulling the device's main power plug, but the lights started going off around the city and the spiritual force in the universe continued dropping. As the students joined the teacher to pull the plug, Wang decided to throw his sword towards Sun. And when she caught it, they appeared inside a strange new world. So he told her to destroy the system with his sword. So she cut the wire with a single swing. A spirit lion tore across the field, pulverizing the earth and parting the sea in a violent instant. Wang emerged from the dust unscathed, leaving the instructor gaping, wondering if the boy hailed from an alien planet entirely. Yet nobody perceived that the force of his sword had slashed a fissure in space, opening a gateway to the hell dimension where beasts waited for this exact moment. Weeks later, inside the classroom, the instructor presented a new student, announcing that she was being promoted to the elite sector for having successfully passed the spiritual energy test. Wang realized he had encountered her in the alternate world he created for Sun, leading him to question if the boundaries of both worlds were starting to collide. After class concluded, the boys spotted a mysterious girl moving through the hallway. Hoping to uncover her true identity, they chose to shadow her. But when they arrived inside a private room, they found she had inexplicably vanished. Consequently, they decided to snoop around, hoping to locate her exact whereabouts. However, when Wang warned them that someone was approaching the room, they quickly scrambled to hide away. Before long, the new girl Li Yao entered the chamber, hoping for some alone time. When she attempted to remove her armor, Guo and Chen decided to reveal themselves to her. They tried explaining that they had lost their way, but the girl labeled them a pair of ugly, disgusting weirdos. As she flung her broom at a statue, it began to spin until the floor split open and they fell into the hole. Knowing they were hopeless without him, Wang decided to follow them down inside. Meanwhile, in the abyss, the mysterious girl from the demon realm appeared before her sister, Liu Yan. Delighted to see her, Liu Yan told her to set her free immediately. But the woman from the demon realm told her that she came to eliminate her as she drew her magical bow. She told Liu Yan that annihilating her was her punishment for failing to end Sun and fired a warning shot that bruised her face. Just then, Wang and the others began falling towards the bottom. Wang awkwardly apologized for interrupting their conversation. However, before they turned into pancakes, Wang summoned a hole in the ground which led into a secret chamber. As they began to look around, they spotted the photo of a lady and realized that she was the woman from the demon realm. At the same time in the abyss, the woman from the demon realm began to accuse Liu Yan of stealing her position as the leader of the Shadow faction. 10 years ago, when the demon frog had invaded the city, she was unluckily blown out of her plane and drawn into the portal to work as a hot secretary for the demon lord. She accused Liu Yan of attacking her plane in hopes of stealing her position and separating her from her lover. So she said that ending her would be a fitting reward for her betrayal. But as she fired an arrow, the teacher appeared to save Liu Yan. He told the woman from the demon realm that Liu Yan never attacked her plane. Because 10 years ago, when the mystical portal opened over the city and the demon frog had begun to consume everyone's spiritual force, Wang had appeared to vanquish it with a blast. This blast had blown the woman from the demon realm's plane open. However, before crashing, Wang had saved it with his powers, but the woman from the demon realm was unluckily blown away from her lover and into the portal. Realizing the teacher was her past lover, the woman from the demon realm told him that she has missed him and desires to remain by his side forever. He told her that he has waited for her ever since she vanished and was hoping to develop a plot with her all through the night. So they began making out in front of her poor trapped sister who wished she was dead instead of watching them. At the same time in the chamber, Wang and the others realized that the place belongs to their teacher who had been searching for the love of his life and hoped that he would be reunited with her forever. A few days later, Wang and his friends arrived at a sword's shop hoping to buy a new sword. When they came across Li Yao, she told them she works in the shop and said that her duty was to maintain the swords. As they watched her do her business, Sun asked if she was an orphan. So she told them that she grew up all by herself and had only her sword spirit as her companion. She said that when she turned 8, her sword spirit had grown tired of seeing her ugly face and had decided to take a break. However, Li Yao was hoping to see her again and had taken up the duty of maintaining swords ever since. When they wondered why she had not bought a new sword, she told them that she could not afford one, because she spent all her money on crypto. As she let out those words, Tang Jian appeared before their eyes with his minions and called her the most useless servant in the world. When Guo asked if they wished to get their ass kicked again, Tang Jian told him that they merely intend to maintain their swords and commanded his minion to hand it over. Upon colliding with Li Yao, the boy instantly soiled his trousers and scrambled away in absolute trembling terror of her presence. Deep within the abyss, Liu Yan successfully summoned the woman from the demon realm's arrow, directing the weapon to smash violently against her heavy iron binding chains there. She tore through the seal, continuing the heavy onslaught upon the chains until the links finally snapped, granting Liu Yan her total, unrestricted freedom once again. Wondering exactly how she might escape, she spotted a gaping hole in the wall before her, realizing she merely needed to swim her way out to safety. Simultaneously, Guo and Chen finally concluded their urgent business nearby. As they wondered if a ghost caused the noises, a strange, distinct sound echoed from inside the restroom stalls nearby. Guo decided to move in and investigate it closer. Water suddenly gushed out before him, and Chen passed out after soiling his pants once again in fear. Wang and the girls arrived, seeing Liu Yan trying to pull herself out, so he immediately flushed her back down the dark drain pipe below. With Guo and Chen unconscious, they laid them in a private room, placing a restorative spell on them to help them fully regain their lost consciousness. Sun considered this her perfect opportunity to finally have Wang all to herself at last. When his sword spirit warned that Liu Yan was attempting to escape again, he immediately headed out to hunt for her without delay. Liu Yan stood inside an elevator, plotting dark revenge on her many hated enemies above. The elevator doors opened, and Wang immediately cast her hard into the ground below him. She managed to find her way outside, watching the couple walk through the school grounds together. As they stared at a mirror, Sun told Wang the mirror was a mystical portal leading from the human world into a different world, potentially leading deep into outer space with the correct magic spell cast. Before she could read her love lines, Wang was punched far into a wall, and Li Yao appeared before her eyes, having been fully possessed by a dark demon spirit. Sun summoned her sword, but Li Yao bound her with a dark spell as the moon began to turn blood red. The demon stated she intended to open a portal into the demon world and would seal her inside there forevermore within the void. As the moon became entirely red, the portal opened, leading straight into the dark demon world. As she drew Sun towards the portal, Liu Yan came flying towards them, determined to end Sun herself personally and violently. Wang appeared just in time to save her, causing Liu Yan to strike Li Yao with a deadly blow that knocked the demon into the portal, shattering the mirror instantly into pieces. As Liu Yan grew angry at her failure, Wang punched her straight into the wall, silencing the spirit for good. With peace finally restored, Wang inspected Sun's spiritual gift, relieved to confirm that she was still alive and well. Weeks later, Wang and the others arrived at Sun's family home, noticing that their million-dollar farm was starting to waste away into nothing but dust. Inside the family cave, Guo asked Sun if her useless father had gambled off all their valuable possessions at a casino. She replied that the loss of spiritual energy in the universe had caused their farm to start withering and dying, adding that without spiritual energy, they were better off abandoning the struggling farm entirely. Sun's mother appeared, stating the farm was a family inheritance and promising to never surrender their attempts of restoring the ancient land. Encouraged by her words, Sun's father said they would start replanting crops once the spiritual energy was restored. That evening after dinner, Wang asked Sun how they could restore the dying farm. She insisted they were better off abandoning it. She said the land was beginning to lose all its water since the spiritual force started vanishing. Once it dried up, their entire family farm would never be restored again. She thanked him for his offer to help, but stated she would rather take care of her own family business. That night on the train, while Wang and the others were traveling all the way back home, they discovered on the news that Sun's family intended to sell off their farm to Tang Jian's useless family and that Sun and Tang Jian would be signing a bloodborne marriage agreement. With the group in shock, they realized Sun's family must have been forced into the agreement. Convinced that it would lead to their doom, Wang suggested that they ruin the forced agreement before it was completed. So the following day, Wang and his friends returned to the family home, fully ready for battle. When they came across Tang Jian's team, Guo threatened to squash them like a crushed plastic cup, but Tang Jian told him that they had returned to avenge their defeat at the competition. As Chen charged at him, a blast went up high in the forests. Guo rushed forward and tried to end Chen but was trapped in Yishi's spell. Before Tang Jian could end Chen, Li Yao cast her own spell to free him, allowing him to strike back while Guo clashed blades with Chen. With Yishi wondering how the boys were freed, Li Yao began rushing straight to her, but she ran off. At the same time, Wang was running towards the cave, hoping to arrive there before the agreement was done. Inside the cave, Tang Jian and Sun were ready to seal the dark agreement. Deep inside the cave, Tang Jian immediately nipped his finger, stamping a bloody print onto the paper, declaring to Sun that he was eager to secure her as his new wife. When she attempted to slit her own skin, Wang suddenly materialized to stop her, seizing the love of his life to flee the chaotic scene. He told her he had arrived to rescue her from the dark agreement, vowing that he wished to remain by her side forever. However, as they flew from the cave, Sun's father intercepted them outside the entrance, insisting the agreement was the only solution to save the farm. Hearing his words, Sun withdrew from Wang's grasp, admitting that she had already promised to sign the binding agreement. She explained that after they left the cave yesterday, Tang Jian's father arrived, offering to invest heavily in their struggling company, but only in exchange for a bloodborne marriage to Tang Jian since the boy was too useless to find a wife for himself. Sun's father had accepted the deal immediately, and her mother agreed it was their singular hope for survival. Her father argued that agreeing to the offer would save their destitute family from abject poverty and ensure the family business remained alive. Their desperate words made her realize her broken family was truly hopeless. She told Wang it was her duty to hold the family together, stating she was willing to sacrifice her own happiness to marry the evil and disgusting Tang Jian. Resigned to her fate, she turned back toward the dark cave. As Wang and the others departed the area, he sensed a mysterious presence lurking deep within the lake. Deciding to investigate the anomaly, he suddenly hauled out a giant star worm that had been ruthlessly sucking all the spiritual force from the area around the farm. Determined to impress his crush, Wang struggled to extract the massive worm while his friends desperately supported him. As memories of Sun grew stronger in his mind, Wang released a powerful flame inside the beast, causing it to rise high into the air. Simultaneously, inside the cave, Sun slit her finger, ready to sign the binding contract. Suddenly, the worm exploded violently right before their eyes and fresh water gushed from the ground, instantly restoring the dry farm to life. Tang Jian's father tried persuading Sun to imprint the agreement, but her security interrupted to report the family business was booming again, and they realized Tang Jian's father could go screw himself. A few weeks later in the city, Wang and the girls discovered the streets overrun with mindless zombies who had fallen into Sun's love spell after her family's enchanted water accidentally leaked into the city's water supply. Consequently, they quietly began to sneak away from the chaotic mess. Before they retreated far, the zombies detected them and attempted to devour them, but Wang and the girls managed to escape. Seeing they were heading toward a dead end, Wang deployed his spirit sword as a magical skateboard, launching into the air with the girls until they landed on the rooftop. As they looked out at the city, they found millions of zombies in the streets who were trying to climb their way to the top of the building. Suddenly, Chen appeared in the street below, having been ensnared by Sun Rong's powerful enchantment. Stripping off his clothes, he began scaling the pile of zombies and sprinted up the walls before flying straight towards the roof. When he told Sun that he loved her, she called him a broke, ugly loser and said that he was too ugly to be loved by anyone. Her harsh words made him crash onto the roof, and they realized that her rejection had broken his spell. Looking to utilize this discovery, she screamed at the zombies below, calling them worthless, disgusting, good-for-nothings whose broken asses deserve absolutely no love. At that instant, the spell vanished from all the zombies. With the realization that the spell could be easily cancelled, Chen began to wonder how they could free the entire city. So Li Yao suggested that Sun live stream a video and reject everyone at the same time so that they would all be free from her spell. However, when she tried using her phone, she realized that there was no cell reception. As Liu Yan appeared on the cell tower before them, she shouted that she had cut off the reception and demanded that Sun surrender herself immediately, but they could not hear her words and tried warning her about a descending meteorite. Before she knew it, the meteorite appeared directly above her and she realized that the universe was certainly against her. And at that instant, she was blown completely to smithereens. With the cell tower destroyed, Wang suggested that they travel up to space for Sun's live stream. When Li Yao wondered how they would arrive in space, Wang showed them his tour tickets for a flight to a space station. Shortly, they began flying away on Wang's sword while the zombies ran after them. As they landed in the city, the zombies began approaching them, so Chen and Li Yao offered to stay behind and keep them away. Sun thought they would be crushed into bones and suggested running off together, but Chen promised to hold them off long enough for the couple to escape. At once, Wang took off with her. They sprinted into the train, the doors slamming shut just in time to successfully keep the ravenous zombies out. As the train took off towards deep space, the cars began to separate high in the air. With Wang and Sun finally left alone in the car, she hoped to hear his love confession. So he began telling her that he has always wished to have alone time with her and said that he has something important to tell her. She leaned in close, eager to hear the rest of his confession. She urged him to confess all his feelings, but he merely stated that he noticed the station was empty and thought that Chen and Li Yao would have loved the sight of outer space if they had come along with them. Just then, the automated system announced that they had reached the terminal station. When they arrived inside the station, Sun stepped out into the open and began to make her global live stream. As she introduced herself, she began telling everyone that she was born to a loving family and wanted to become the perfect daughter that would make them happy. However, when she got to high school, she realized that she was a screwed-up little child who needed to fall in love with a boy and make herself into a future wife. And when her family went bankrupt, she discovered that no one was special and that every good thing comes with a price. Ever since then, she began working to earn her own respect and became determined to never rely on her family's wealth. Although the world finally fell in love with her through her accidental love spell, she said that she doesn't need their love but only desires Wang's love forever. As she let out those words, the spell began to vanish from everyone instantly. Sun and Wang tried to enjoy the moment, but soon discovered that a massive, powerful meteorite was heading towards the Earth. With Sun afraid that they would all meet their doom, Wang merely drew his sword and flung it at the meteorite, shattering it in an instant as it dispelled into beautiful lights across the sky. With the threat vanquished, Sun suggested that they go see other parts of the station. But as they stepped outside, they realized that they had mysteriously transformed into three-dimensional characters. Hoping to discover a way out, Sun launched her sword, but it returned to her, making her realize that they were trapped inside a loop. Wang suggested breaking the wall and casting a guardian light to protect Sun Rang from freezing. However, as he punched a hole into the wall, they discovered that they were trapped inside a spatial cycle. Inside the demon realm, a servant reports to the emperor. He confirms that he has successfully trapped Wang inside a dimensional seal, utilizing the power of the dimensional lamps. He assures the emperor that this seal is absolute and can never be broken. Simultaneously on Earth, monsters begin to invade the world. One monster tries to end a man but is blasted away. Johnny stands before it, blasts it once more, and takes off, allowing the monster to chase him. Using a device, he tells his men to rescue the people away from the city, but a beast appears to them and ends them all instantly. At the terminal station, Wang manages to pull up the control panel. With a snap, he transforms them into a polygon form and Sun looks like the hot chick from GTA. She told him that she likes her new form and said that it makes her look like a useless video game character. But Wang realized that the Earth was being attacked. Inside the Earth, a large portal appeared over the sky and dozens of monsters began patrolling the city. The beast told Zhuo Yi to surrender, saying that the city was already surrounded and would soon be destroyed. But Zhuo Yi said that they would kick their ass back to their useless world. As an old magician walked into a magic circle, he began to summon a mighty thunder over the city, ready to annihilate the monsters. As lightning descended on him, a powerful light began to spread around him. When the beast tried to crush him, the other magicians supported him, causing the light to blow up at the monster. With the beast defeated, the magicians thought that the battle was over. Before their eyes, another portal opened in the sky and a demon carrier began descending towards the ground. Looking to destroy it, the old man began to unleash his powers. But the weight of the carrier destroyed the ground under him. As he tried releasing all his spiritual powers, more portals began to open across the cities, and several dozen carriers began to descend, crushing him under all the weight. Thousands of beasts began emerging from the holes and invaded the city. Meanwhile, in space, as Sun watched the world being destroyed, she began to wonder if the Earth could be saved. Wang told her that everyone could still be saved. As he returned with a mirror, he told her that the dimensional seal was like a video game, and Sun realized that they could destroy the seal by crushing the dimensional lamps. As Wang began to glow with a powerful light, the flames in the demon world began to burn brighter. Channeling Sun's spirit, Wang triggers a violent chain reaction. Light spears shatter every lamp until the terminal station seal finally dissolves. The binding spell breaks, instantly restoring the cursed couple to their true human forms. With the obstacle removed, Wang orders Sun to remain at the station while he saves the Earth. She warns him that his identity will be revealed to the world, but he insists that saving the world is far more important. He launches toward Earth, obliterating the enemy carriers with a single strike. But before he can unleash his full power, a mysterious girl materializes behind him, teleporting them both away from the battlefield instantly. Reappearing inside a moving train, Wang recognizes the girl as a girl from the butterfly race. She reveals she belongs to the butterfly race, a people who watched helplessly as their home world was annihilated by the demon emperor's ruthless army. Wang questions why they did not stand and fight. She explains that the demon emperor is far too powerful for anyone to defeat, stating he has conquered too many innocent worlds to count. Moments later, they materialize within the demon world. She demands a demon servant release her captured sister, revealing she brought Wang here to exchange him for her captured sibling's freedom. The demon slams her to the ground, calling her a useless, disgusting weakling who deserves to be vanquished for being so utterly moronic and gullible. However, when he tries forcing Wang down, the boy stands firm, blasting the creature deep into the stone walls. Impressed by this strength, the demon emperor calls Wang a worthy opponent, declaring he has not fought an enemy like him in 1,000 years. Rising into the air, he lands before Wang and demands to know his name. Wang simply replies that he is from the elite class of the Songhai faction back on Earth. Immediately, the emperor blasts him with a powerful punch, convinced the boy is pulverized. But Wang stands before his eyes unscathed, telling him that he punches like a pathetic weakling. Shortly, the demon crashes outside his castle from a devastating blow. Wang tells him that he tried to avoid any battles so that he would not destroy the entire Earth. Unwilling to accept defeat, the emperor takes off, ruthlessly destroying his own army in the process. Wang flies after him, deciding to fight back. The demon punches him far away, following in a streak of light before kicking him hard into a massive rock. Wang emerges and they fly around the rock before he evades a crushing blow from the demon. The entity pursued him, and they clashed in swirling, colorful lights, striking and kicking violently like sworn enemies. The demon spun into a mighty, destructive blast determined to crush Wang, spiraling wildly around the universe until he became completely exhausted from the effort. Realizing Wang remained unscathed, the emperor questioned his true identity. Wang began spinning him around, flinging him far off toward another planet where he crashed deep inside the ruins of his palace. Wang appeared before him, ready to finally end him, but the demon decided to surrender to save himself. In a flash, a servant appeared behind Wang, saying he discovered his weakness and had been waiting for the perfect moment to exploit it. Mistaking Wang's seal for his strength, he peeled the talisman off, and the emperor mistakenly thought they had won the battle. However, as Wang burst into flame, a blinding light exploded the castle, destroying absolutely everything in sight. As it vanquished the planet, magical lights penetrated Earth, causing the monsters to instantly obliterate. While skies cleared, the carriers began to vanish. With the aliens vanquished, the people started celebrating their miraculous victory. As it started to rain, water began to heal their wounds, and spiritual energy started rising across the land again. Wang appeared inside the Earth with a powerful clap of thunder. Lin thought he had come to eliminate her for trying to pass him directly over to the Demon Emperor. She told him to allow her sister to live, saying she would face the wrath of his vengeance all by herself. But Wang merely told her to call his father and tell him to bring a new seal before he destroyed the earth like the demon world. A few weeks later, another statue was made in honor of Zhuo, and the world thought he was the hero once again. At the same time, they began to rebuild the damaged world, and everyone tried returning to their normal lives. As the group rode inside a train, Guo began to wonder who truly saved the world. Chen suggested that it was a new mysterious magician. Sun Rong tried asking Wang what happened in the war. She saw his face was fast asleep, but he was simply glad to finally not hear her annoying voice echoing in his ears, bringing the anime to an end. Pharma Yakutani was a brilliant but brutally overworked pharmaceutical researcher whose life had collapsed into nothing but lab work, medical journals, and deadlines. Years of non-stop pressure finally broke him, and his body gave out at his desk. The world faded, and his final thought was that he still had research unfinished. However, death wasn't the end of his story. He opened his eyes again, expecting fluorescent lab lights, but instead he saw ornate wallpaper, a canopy bed, and a young pink-haired girl hovering beside him with panic in her eyes. She called him Master Pharma as she begged him not to move, explaining that he had just been struck by lightning. His attempt to respond came out with the voice of a child rather than the exhausted adult he remembered being. That alone shattered any remaining sense of normalcy. Looking at his small arms and weak frame, he immediately realized something was wrong, very wrong. Trying to stand made him collapse, but he crawled toward the window anyway. What he saw outside was the modern world he knew, but an unfamiliar city of carriages, stone buildings, and aristocrats in period clothing. The shock widened his eyes further as he processed the impossible. He had been reborn in a completely different world. When he finally found a mirror, an unfamiliar boy with silver hair stared back at him. The girl, his caretaker, grew concerned he'd lost his sanity. He asked who Pharma was, and she looked confused as she explained that he was Pharma de Médicis, the young heir to the prestigious Médicis house. The name clicked immediately. A noble family of pharmacists. Had he really reincarnated into a fantasy family of court physicians? Seeing his confusion, the maid composed herself and reintroduced her name as Charlotte Soller, though everyone called her Lot. She hurried off to prepare new bandages as he tried to make sense of his new reality. His memories from his former life were intact, but the body wasn't his. The lightning strike likely killed the original Pharma, and his soul had taken over. As he was examining himself, he noticed old ink writing on his arm, remnants of the previous Pharma's studies, but when he wiped across it, the markings erased instantly, like they were being purified from existence. Before he could dwell on that oddity, Lot returned and noticed a brilliant emblem on his shoulder. Her expression froze, then lit with awe. She knelt down and announced it was the divine mark of Panictheos, the god of medicine. He reflexively assumed she was talking about some god of chaos or fear, but she corrected him immediately. In this world, Panictheos was the patron deity of healing, worshipped by pharmacists and nobles alike. Lot then decided to review the basics of his identity as if introducing him to his own life. The Médicis were a legendary aristocratic house that had served as royal pharmacists for generations. His father, Bruno de Médicis, was not only an archduke, but also the president of the Imperial School of Pharmacy. His older brother Pal was overseas studying medical arts, while his younger sister Blanche was training in etiquette. Most importantly, she explained that noble pharmacists wielded divine arts, magic-like abilities that manifested according to one's patron deity. In Pharma's case, his divine art was tied to water. Hearing this, he asked what would happen if he had somehow forgotten how to use them. Lot went pale. A noble without divine arts could lose status and even be cast aside from the family. That threat alone was enough to push him into frantic training the moment he was alone. On instinct, he attempted to visualize the molecular structure of water, something no one in this world even understood, and suddenly his left hand glowed. Spirals of pure water burst from his palms uncontrollably, flooding the room and sending him scrambling to the window to redirect the torrent. When he finally regained control, Lot shouted from the garden, drenched but delighted, insisting that the water felt refreshing and comforting. Pharma hoped she wouldn't start asking too many questions about it. Back in his room, his scientific mind kicked in. He experimented rapidly and discovered something astonishing. His left hand could create elements, while his right hand could remove or nullify them. A power to generate substances and another to erase them, abilities that went beyond divine arts as this world understood them. When Lot returned, he dispelled his experiments and pretended nothing happened. She praised him for remembering his divine arts and rushed him to the library to review pharmacology. What awaited him was a massive archive of handwritten medical tomes. Pharma skimmed through them and quickly realized their knowledge was centuries behind what he had studied in his former life. Diseases without cures, contamination without sterilization, treatments riddled with superstition, it was a pharmacologist's nightmare and a revolutionary's paradise. That evening at dinner, the Médicis family gathered around the table. His father questioned his condition and then tested him by asking about the composition of a treatment used earlier. Pharma flawlessly explained the ingredients and preparation method, shocking the table. Satisfied, his father declared he would resume lessons with his tutor Eleanor Bonifoy the next day. Eleanor arrived ready to lecture, only to sense instantly that something about Pharma felt different. She noted that he wasn't acting like the childish student she remembered. To excuse his altered behavior, Pharma claimed the lightning strike had left his memories hazy. Eleanor accepted it and began reviewing divine arts fundamentals. Every noble had a guardian deity and a divine art tailored to that blessing. Eleanor continued the lesson by explaining that divine arts were inherited blessings tied to the gods. Pharma's father and brother were both blessed by Panictheos, while her own guardian deity was Hydrotheos, granting her water-based arts. There were 5 major attributes of divine arts in this world, divided across positive and negative variations. However, there was a rumor of a 6th classification called None, reserved for non-standard attributes so rare that they hadn't appeared in over 1,000 years. Curious and slightly nervous, Pharma asked what kind of attribute would allow someone to create any substance at will. Eleanor didn't need to think. Anyone capable of that would either be a god or a monster. Pharma remained silent. They moved to a lakeside training area where Eleanor immediately scolded him for arriving without his wand. Wands were essential tools for nobles, amplifying and stabilizing divine arts. He realized with embarrassment that he had thrown his wand aside earlier, mistaking it for some strange disciplinary tool. Rolling her eyes, Eleanor lent him her own wand and demonstrated proper spellwork by launching a thin spear of water across the lake, with all the dramatic energy of a mid-season anime finisher. Pharma mimicked her posture and visualized the spell in his mind. What emerged, however, was not a modest water spear. A roaring mass of water burst from the wand, spiraling into a dragon-like torrent that towered over the lake until the wand finally slipped from his hand. Eleanor stood frozen, stunned by the sheer scale of the output. According to everything she knew, divine arts required incantations to activate, divine capacity was fixed at birth, and divine attributes never exceeded inherited limits. Pharma had violated all 3. She pulled out a measuring wand and instructed him to hold it quietly. The gauge filled instantly and then cracked, overflowing with a colorless reading that defied classification. Colorless capacity meant he had both positive and negative attributes simultaneously, a phenomenon believed impossible. When she spotted the crest of Panictheos on his shoulder, her mind drew the only conclusion available: he was something beyond human. She snapped the measuring wand shut and made him swear never to hold a divine instrument in front of anyone, especially not his father. She called off the rest of the lesson and walked him home, though she could barely see without her glasses. Pharma guided her by hand through the garden until they were safely indoors. After catching her breath, the atmosphere turned painfully awkward. To lighten the mood, Pharma performed a goofy pose and told her to try it whenever she misplaced her glasses. She assumed he was mocking her, but when she mimicked the pose, her vision surprisingly sharpened. Pharma tried it too and noticed that 2 parts of her body emitted a faint glow. He instinctively reached for her hand, revealing an injury she hadn't mentioned. When she asked how he knew, he explained that illnesses glowed blue in his sight and turned white once he identified the cause. Her expression drained of all color. Only Panictheos himself was said to possess the divine eye capable of diagnosing ailments by sight. And then she noticed something more horrifying: Pharma had no shadow. Eleanor stumbled backward, screaming and begging for her life. Convinced that she had just witnessed a god or a monster wearing human skin, she fled into the night. The next morning, Pharma's father Bruno informed him that Eleanor had resigned due to a sudden high fever. Pharma knew the real reason but could hardly admit that he had unintentionally traumatized his tutor. Bruno handed him a potion and a sealed letter, ordering him to deliver both to her personally. Upon arriving at her home, Pharma was greeted by Eleanor wearing full body armor, helmet and all, demanding to know whether he had come to silence her for learning his secret. Pharma raised both hands to show he wasn't carrying a wand. Only then did she remove her helmet and agree to listen. He handed her the letter and potion, but she mistrusted both. Why would Bruno send her medicine when she could brew her own? Clearly, she concluded it was poison. Pharma then handed over his written medical prescription for her fever as well as a balm for her injury. She stared at them like they were explosive devices. Only when Pharma begged her to listen did she relent. He explained that he needed her to continue as his tutor. Eleanor collapsed to her knees, mistaking the situation entirely and swearing loyalty as though he were Panictheos incarnate. Pharma quickly clarified that he needed her knowledge, not her obedience. There were no books on divine arts in the Medicis archives, and without her guidance he lacked any means of controlling his abilities. He assured her he would not force her, then produced a bouquet of fresh flowers as thanks for her patience. He placed them gently in her hands, bowed, and took his leave. Behind him, Eleanor stood motionless, cheeks red, staring at the flowers as if they were a divine revelation. Later that day, Elen examined the powdered medicine Pharma gave her. It wasn't a tincture, an extract, or a syrup. Medicine in powdered form simply didn't exist in this world's pharmacology. Yet after ingesting it, her fever broke faster than any potion crafted by Bruno. As she lay in bed, it struck her that Panictheos was a peaceful deity of healing. If Pharma truly bore his mark, then fearing him might be a mistake. Perhaps she needed to approach him with a more positive mindset. The next morning, she returned to the Medicis estate still wearing her full armor set just in case. She informed Pharma that she would resume tutoring him, but strictly because she would be held responsible if he lost control of his powers through negligence. Only after that did she thank him for the white powder that cured her fever almost overnight. The two traveled to a remote island to train safely away from prying eyes. They spent the entire day refining divine arts, testing wand control, and learning to moderate spell output, though to anyone watching from afar, it might have looked suspiciously like they were bonding rather than training. Back at the castle, Pharma turned his attention to mastering the divine eye. He practiced by discreetly observing the staff. The glowing patterns taught him that some illnesses could be permanently treated and the light vanished when cured. Others only dimmed, indicating chronic conditions that could only be managed rather than fully resolved. Medicine in this world was primitive. Even nobles relied more on potions and purification rites than scientific understanding. To ensure self-preservation in case the nobles or clergy decided to accuse him of heresy or witchcraft, Pharma made himself indispensable. He diagnosed ailments among the staff and crafted treatments using his divine abilities to produce substances that would normally be impossible to source in this era. He became so focused that he lost track of time the way he used to during research in his previous life. Eventually, he completed a balm for Lot's eczema. When he gave it to her, she lit up with excitement, eager to share it with everyone. Pharma stopped her. Medicine was not something that should be passed around casually. Instead, he personally distributed individualized treatments to each staff member based on their conditions. When he asked why the laundry woman had cried upon receiving her medicine, Lot explained that servants never received gifts from nobles, let alone medical care. And more importantly, noble pharmacists were forbidden from treating commoners. Pharma fell silent. In his previous world, access to healthcare was also uneven. The injustice felt painfully familiar. He began planning solutions, medicines that could be produced cheaply and distributed widely. The next day at lunch, the dining hall was unusually quiet. Bruno revealed that Blanche had contracted chickenpox. Pharma's medical mind immediately began analyzing the situation. Chickenpox existed in this world. Blanche was young, so her prognosis was good, but in a pre-vaccine era, the disease could still be dangerous. Bruno ordered everyone to avoid Blanche for 3 weeks to prevent spreading the virus. Pharma was the exception. He had contracted it in his previous life and therefore was immune. As Bruno left the room, Pharma noticed him coughing but said nothing for the moment. Pharma went straight to the laboratory and began formulating an antiviral treatment. The key ingredient required precise molecular synthesis, and it took several attempts before his conjuring succeeded. Then he visited Blanche's room. She lay bundled in blankets, face dotted with red blisters, refusing visitors and insisting that he go away. When he mentioned he had brought medicine, she protested. She hated anything bitter. Pharma anticipated this and mixed the medicine into macarons, coaxing her into eating them. Halfway through chewing, she paused. Their father claimed there was no cure for chickenpox. How did Pharma have one? He blurted out that he found it in a book. Blanche immediately questioned how a book existed in Bruno's library that Bruno didn't know about. Caught off guard, Pharma declared that it would be their secret. Blanche agreed instantly. He reminded her not to spread the virus, but this world had no concept of viruses. When she asked him what a virus was, Pharma compared it to an invisible ghost, accidentally terrifying her in the process. As they talked, she admitted that he had become much kinder lately and that it made her love him more. The comment stirred memories of his younger sister from his original life. Several days later, Bruno was stunned to find Blanche fully recovered. When he asked if anything unusual had happened, she placed a finger over her lips and declared it a secret. Later in the lab, Pharma finally accepted that even by isekai protagonist standards, he was abnormal. Not only could he create substances out of nothing and erase them with a touch, his eyes worked like diagnostic equipment. He could zoom in on cells, detect pathogens, and read physical conditions like a living MRI scanner. And to top it all off, he had no shadow. Not even vampires in his world were that committed. He casually invented a primitive microscope using lenses and wood. As he admired his own handiwork, the family butler Jean-Alain Gabin summoned him to his father's office. Bruno was visibly coughing and informed Pharma that they had been summoned by the Empress. Her condition had taken a drastic turn and required immediate attention. At the Imperial Palace, the atmosphere was grim. Nobles, physicians, and clergy filled the chamber like attendees at a funeral. The Empress Elizabeth II was younger than Pharma expected, but clearly suffering. Bruno greeted her respectfully while Pharma stood behind him, acting as his assistant. Bruno drew a blood sample and used divine arts to examine it, then joined the court physicians in deliberation. Their discussion revolved around ominous metaphors about her stars fading and her life approaching its twilight. It was clear to Pharma that they were preparing for palliative care, not cure. Sedative potions were prepared to dull her pain. When the Empress begged Bruno for the truth about her condition, he reassured her gently. She still had a chance, he insisted, even as he prepared potions to numb her until the end. From their behavior, Pharma could tell they had already given up. That resignation angered him. He activated the divine eye and scanned the Empress. Her lungs lit with multiple critical conditions, tuberculosis, malignant lesions, and progressive infections. In his former world, these were deadly but treatable. The compound therapy required was intricate, and Pharma doubted he could conjure exact formulations flawlessly on the first attempt. The Empress's young son rushed in, begging for his mother to recover. The entire court fell silent, powerless. Pharma stepped forward. He asked the Empress to allow him to administer a new medicine. Bruno immediately tried to stop his son from humiliating the family at court, but the Empress intervened. Her divine arts told her that Pharma was trustworthy. She granted him permission to proceed. Pharma shut himself in a laboratory and began transcribing formulas. He selected 4 separate drugs that would work synergistically against the infection. As he conjured them, Bruno burst into the lab, demanding he stop. Tuberculosis had no cure in this world, he reminded his son. Pharma was shocked that Bruno could diagnose accurately without a microscope. Bruno believed Pharma was gambling with the Empress's life and urged him to abandon the madness. Instead, Pharma declared that Bruno would need the medicine as well. Bruno attacked, attempting to physically restrain him. Pharma blocked the icicles of Bruno's divine arts and erected a thick wall of ice that split the laboratory in half, sealing himself off. Bruno stared in disbelief. No wand, no incantation. Who was this child? Bruno spotted Pharma's notebook filled with unfamiliar medicines and theories. Pharma claimed he saw them in a dream after the lightning strike. Bruno also noticed the mark of panikthios on his shoulder. He concluded that Pharma's gifts were divine blessings. Pharma then urged him to take credit for the medicine to strengthen his political position, but Bruno refused. If Pharma intended to change the world with his words, then he would have to take responsibility for them. Pharma melted the ice wall and returned to the court wearing a cloth mask to avoid alarming the nobles. As he presented the treatment, Claude begged Bruno to rein in his son's insanity. Bruno replied that Pharma may have already surpassed them. Pharma demonstrated his microscope to the Empress, revealing tiny organisms writhing within her blood and lungs. The Empress ordered Claude to verify it. One by one, the nobles stared into the lens, witnessing a microscopic world they never knew existed. Pharma explained that these organisms, bacteria, caused many illnesses. He declared that with treatment and observation over 6 months, he would cure the Empress. He drank his own dosage first, followed by the Empress staking his life on the regimen. On the carriage ride home, Bruno remembered Pharma's childhood. He had never treated him as a son, only as an heir to the Médicis lineage, a future court physician. Perhaps the gods had punished him for that neglect. He suspected now that the child beside him was no longer the same as the one he raised. Upon arrival, Pharma handed him a dosage of the medicine. Bruno accepted it, believing it to be the will of panikthios. Pharma confessed that he knew nothing about pharmacy beyond his cheat-like abilities. He wanted Bruno to guide him not as a superior but as an equal. They shook hands like colleagues. 3 months passed, during which Bruno and Pharma worked side by side. They debated theories, exchanged knowledge, and dissected cases. When Bruno mentioned that a famous doctor sought the tuberculosis cure, Pharma admitted that only he could currently produce it. Bruno had already sent the man away, claiming the cure was the blessing of Panixios. Pharma explained that he intended to publish the recipe once he could manufacture it without magic. Bruno warned him that such ambition bordered on heresy. Pharmacists and nobles alike would attack him if he disrupted their authority. He also revealed that the court suspected the Empress had been intentionally infected. Pharma countered that the odds of infection upon exposure were nowhere near certain. Bruno once again interpreted his son's knowledge as divine revelation. Before leaving, Bruno glanced at Pharma's notes and was reminded of a legendary heretic scholar who almost drove himself insane with research. At the palace, Pharma encountered Lord Noah, who discreetly informed him that the Empress intended to reward him for saving her life. Pharma shrugged off the offer. He asked for nothing. Noah refused to let Pharma throw away his reward like a clueless background character. He reminded him that he had just saved the life of the most powerful woman in the empire, and that the court was ready to shower him with wealth, titles, and potentially harems of rare beast-eared maidens if he so desired. Pharma's mind went blank. After nearly being browbeaten into choosing something, he finally confessed that he wanted to open a pharmacy accessible to every social class. Noah stared at him as if he had just rejected a divine treasure chest in exchange for wooden sandals. Later, Pharma visited the Empress. She reported that the medicine was working and she was recovering steadily. Pharma advised her not to rely too heavily on the drugs and warned that complications could still arise. She teased him about how boldly he had declared his confidence in front of the greatest physicians in the nation. She confessed that everyone had already begun preparing her funeral after her collapse and that her authority as a ruler had been quietly eroded. She wondered aloud whether she even deserved to return to the throne after being absent and helpless for so long. Pharma disagreed firmly. Her son Louis needed his mother, and so did the nation. His quiet conviction gave her strength. As he left, he remarked that both of them had faced death once already, so they ought to live the rest of their lives with purpose. Months later, the Empress had transformed from a bedridden invalid into a commanding presence once again. She summoned Bruno to the palace and sent him away with a sealed letter. The following day, Bruno instructed Pharma to accompany him while properly dressed as a noble. Pharma felt out of place, but Bruno reminded him that he was the son of an archduke and a member of the Medicis lineage. At the royal hall, the Empress's entrance was announced and the audience bowed. She called Bruno forward and rewarded him with a new territory rich in medicinal herbs. Then she summoned Pharma. Convinced it was a mistake, he hesitated before kneeling. The Empress promoted him from apprentice to full royal pharmacist, granting him his official badge. She also granted him permission to establish a pharmacy within the royal capital. That afternoon, a squad of engineers arrived at the Medicis estate demanding specifications for the new pharmacy. Pharma tried to tell them he wasn't ready, but they panicked and pleaded, fearing punishment if they delayed. Thankfully, Alain arrived to assist, forcing Pharma to commit. He sketched a blueprint he had envisioned in secret. A few months later, the construction was complete. The chief engineer asked what name should be placed on the signboard. Pharma mused aloud about calling it a parallel world pharmacy to distinguish it from traditional shops. The old man immediately assumed that was the official name and had it painted onto the sign. Alain thought the name was pleasant, though Pharma insisted it was all a misunderstanding. She also warned that a gentle name wouldn't prevent the pharmacist guild from picking a fight. Almost on cue, a stiff and irritable businessman barged in, demanding to see the owner. When Pharma introduced himself, the man announced he was Veron, master of the pharmacist guild. Veron eyed Pharma skeptically and implied he would probably be selling candy and trinkets given his age. Pharma remained calm, answering politely as Alain quietly fumed behind him. Veron asked whether the shop would price its medicines expensively. Pharma replied that he intended to make drugs affordable to the masses. Veron's expression tightened in outrage. Alain finally snapped and delivered several sharp verbal strikes until Veron retreated in indignation. When they inspected the interior for final preparations, Pharma realized there was no one assigned to handle accounting. Lot immediately volunteered. Pharma gave her a blank stare. She was barely a child. When he declined, she burst into tears, pleading to be useful. He compromised and allowed her to run errands instead, a role she accepted as though she had been granted a court title. Later that evening, Pharma returned home to find the household strangely subdued. Tears were shed as Cedric Luno, the loyal steward who managed the estate's finances, revealed he had been asked to retire. Pharma found the situation inexplicable. Cedric had performed his duties with unwavering diligence. Cedric explained that he believed Bruno was worried about his deteriorating knees and had dismissed him out of concern. Pharma made a counteroffer. If Cedric agreed to work alongside him at the pharmacy, he would treat his knees and restore his mobility. Cedric accepted immediately, grateful for the chance to continue serving the family. Pharma then discussed the matter with Bruno, who shrugged and explained that Cedric's dismissal was final. Pharma was free to employ him however he wished. Bruno also presented a chest of gold crowns to help him launch the pharmacy, confessing that he wished to do something honorable for his son. Pharma realized that Bruno had orchestrated the entire situation, providing him capital, a trustworthy accountant, and plausible deniability, while pretending otherwise. Everyone avoided acknowledging it, but Pharma thanked them sincerely. Weeks passed, and despite the grand opening, the pharmacy remained empty. Not a single customer crossed the threshold. Pharma wondered whether his pricing or advertising had failed. Elaine explained that this was typical. Commoners purchased medicine from small local shops, while nobles summoned pharmacists directly to their estates. The concept of a public medical storefront simply did not exist yet. Meanwhile, townsfolk watched the pristine marble building from a safe distance like it was a dragon's den. No one wanted to be the first to enter. During a staff meeting, Pharma admitted that his goal was to make medicine accessible to commoners, yet his shop was being treated like a psychiatric ward run by nobility. At that moment, Lot burst into the room carrying a stack of papers. She announced that she had conducted a survey of 100 townsfolk regarding why they refused to enter. She read the results formally, sending the staff into applause. The first issue was the royal seal at the entrance, which frightened commoners into thinking the place was restricted to nobles. Others feared accidentally misbehaving in front of aristocrats and being punished for trivial offenses such as speaking out of turn. Some found the armored knights stationed nearby intimidating. Finally, several respondents doubted that a child could responsibly run a medical establishment. These were simple issues, solvable once the shop built trust and credibility. They immediately began strategizing. Prices were displayed at the storefront to give transparency. That afternoon, an elderly customer named Mr. Jean entered to purchase some candy and helped himself to their mineral water. The staff didn't mind, they only wished more patrons would be as casual as him. Pharma asked whether Jean was a sailor and attempted to sell him vitamin C candies to prevent scurvy. Jean politely declined and made a hasty exit, leaving Pharma wondering how long it would take for the pharmacy to gain momentum. When Pharma followed Mr. Jean outside, he noticed the old man chatting with several merchants. Before he could ask what they were discussing, his eyes caught two suspiciously familiar clowns in cheap traveling costumes. The disguises were barely functional. No one else in the capital had that posture, that hairstyle, and that aristocratic trying to blend in energy. Of course, it was his parents. Inside, his mother broke character long enough to say something other than her trademark aristocratic catchphrase. Pharma ignored the novelty and asked why they were sneaking around in broad daylight dressed like background NPCs. She admitted they merely wanted to see how he was doing, while Bruno requested a formal tour of the facility. Pharma began on the first floor, which housed the storefront with neatly displayed goods, a laboratory for pharmaceutical preparation, and a waiting area for customers. The second floor held the examination rooms and resting spaces for patients. The third floor provided living quarters and a small kitchen for the staff. The fourth and final floor was Pharma's private research area, where he developed new medicines and studied difficult cases. After the tour, Bruno commented on the steady noble foot traffic he observed outside, but noted the complete absence of commoner customers. Pharma confirmed that he had yet to gain the trust of the general population. His mother suggested diversifying the product line by including cosmetics, items that would attract women across social classes. Cosmetics were always in demand and rarely tied to illness, she reasoned. Pharma admitted that cosmetics were not his specialty, but he considered the viability. He asked what sort of product she would recommend. She desired a skin treatment with a pleasant fragrance. Before Pharma could respond, Bruno intervened sternly, forbidding the creation of white face powder. His wife protested, as she had been avoiding such powders at his request for some time, but Bruno insisted that women who used it deteriorated rapidly. From Bruno's observation alone, Pharma deduced exactly why. Traditional white powder in this world was made from lead carbonate and mercuric chloride, both heavy metals that were highly toxic when absorbed through the skin. Bruno further complained that noble women were resorting to bloodletting to achieve a pale complexion like porcelain dolls. To prevent his wife from imitating such dangerous practices, he reassured her that she was already beautiful without artificial whitening, causing her to blush and forget the entire argument. Their discussion was interrupted when a young man rushed into the pharmacy in a panic, asking for the person in charge. His lady companion had collapsed and was in critical condition. Pharma left immediately, following him to a carriage where guards initially barred his entry until they noticed his royal seal. Inside, he found a pale, exhausted girl who looked as though heartbreak had personally dismantled her endocrine system. He activated the divine eye, but found no fever, no organ failure, no infection that would explain her collapse. What he did notice were small incisions along her veins, evidence of professional bloodletting. He diagnosed her with severe anemia, explaining that her body lacked the blood it desperately needed to keep her conscious. She insisted that the procedure had been performed by a professional, but Pharma pointed out that the multiple incisions were inflamed and likely infected, requiring immediate treatment at the pharmacy. Back at the shop, she confessed the reason for her desperate act. A noble boy she adored had rejected her affection, claiming she wasn't pale enough. She believed that if she made herself more doll-like, he would accept her. Even after collapsing, her priority was still her appearance rather than her survival. Pharma prescribed medicine for Chloe and begged her to stop using white powder cosmetics, but she refused. In her mind, a woman's value was determined solely by how desirable she appeared to men, and being anything less than perfect made her a burden to her family. Lot urged Pharma to help her, so he considered alternatives and asked Chloe to return in a week. Over the next few days, Pharma developed a prototype cosmetic formula. When he tested it on himself, the effect gave him a bizarrely painted clown complexion. Surprisingly, the women in the shop found it charming. Elen, however, was more concerned with safety than aesthetics. Pharma reassured her that unlike the mercury-based powders used in the city, substances as toxic as industrial poison, his formula used safe, non-hazardous ingredients. Elen suggested that the old dangerous powders should be banned entirely. Pharma explained that he already intended to consult with the Empress regarding regulation. A week later, Chloe returned to collect her cosmetics. She desperately needed them after nearly collapsing from both anemia and insecurity. Pharma demonstrated the proper use of sunscreen, moisturizers, and foundation while Elen applied the cosmetics. When they finished, Chloe stared at her reflection in awe. She felt as though she had transformed from an invisible plain girl into someone fashionable and confident. With tears in her eyes, she thanked Pharma for saving her from both her illness and her self-destructive beauty practices. The following day, Lot took to the streets to promote the new products targeting women who longed for fairer skin or smoother complexions. Even an elderly woman expressed interest but explained that she could not read the instructions. Lot provided her with a visual guide designed for illiterate users. Business began to boom almost instantly. Evidently, people cared more about their appearances than their health. Soon complaints arose that Chloe had grown ugly again because the latest shipment had sold out before she could purchase more. Pharma apologized, explaining that production was limited due to manpower constraints. Chloe proposed a solution. She offered to create a subsidiary under her family's business, providing financing and labor to mass-produce cosmetics. Cedric evaluated the proposal and confirmed it was a favorable contract, so Pharma accepted. Within a week, Chloe established a dedicated cosmetics branch and recruited an enthusiastic workforce willing to trade labor for a lifetime supply of beauty products. In a matter of weeks, the pharmacy's popularity soared. Lot returned with another survey, and this time the results were overwhelmingly positive. The staff celebrated. They had successfully overcome their initial hurdle in gaining public trust. A few days later, Pharma's family traveled to inspect the new territory granted to Bruno by the Empress. Upon arrival, Bruno praised the caretaker for managing the estate well and requested a full report. The region was a major port that connected the empire to foreign trade and was renowned for its production of medicinal herbs, making it a valuable asset for any pharmacist. Back in the new territory, the adults gathered in the study to discuss complicated topics such as taxation, infrastructure, and administrative management. Seeing that Pharma contributed as much as a decorative fruit bowl to the discussion, Bruno dismissed him and suggested he go play by the seaside. Outside, Pharma found Lot and Blanche proudly presenting an elaborate sandcastle they had constructed. Blanche begged to play in the ocean, but Pharma reminded them both that neither of them could swim. Their expressions collapsed into disappointment. After a brief siege of pleading, pouting, and strategic big sibling manipulation, Pharma relented and escorted them toward the water. As they approached the shore, Pharma spotted Elen lounging beneath a tree. She stood up, announced she wanted to swim too, then began unfastening her belt as if preparing for a beach episode straight out of a comedy arc. She asked whether Pharma intended to join in. One look toward Blanche reminded him of his younger sister in his original world. The memory of playing together at the beach and losing her far too early hit him unexpectedly, filling him with a melancholy nostalgia. His reflection was cut short by a scream. Blanche had been dragged out by a strong current and was being pulled rapidly away from shore. Without hesitation, Pharma plunged into the ocean. Hélène tried to follow, but the tide immediately overpowered her. Blanche slipped beneath the surface, sinking into the dark water. Watching her disappear ignited something deep within Pharma. He shouted her name, and a radiant burst of light erupted from his crest. In an instant, the seawater vanished from around them, forming a massive evacuated space in the middle of the ocean, a shimmering pocket of air and sand. Hélène regained consciousness beside Pharma, who was holding back the wall of water while carefully guiding Blanche back toward land. She could only stare in disbelief at the impossible scene. Once they returned to the shore, Hélène asked what he had done. Pharma guessed it was the negative aspect of his water divine arts taking effect. Hélène rejected that explanation. Negative water attributes manipulated water, but they were not capable of annihilating it completely down to the sand and salt residue. Before Pharma could panic at his own abilities, Lot began trembling. He feared her reaction, but Hélène stepped forward, praising him for saving Blanche all on his own. That night, Pharma replayed the incident in his mind. He realized he hadn't merely displaced the water, he had eliminated the salt and minerals from the seafloor as well. If he had lost control, Blanche and Hélène could have been harmed. He also noticed that Lot was hiding her fear whenever she approached him. Before she could speak, Pharma apologized and promised not to use his powers so recklessly again. To his surprise, Lot insisted she wasn't afraid, she was amazed. She apologized for failing to dive after Blanche, but Pharma assured her it was normal. She couldn't swim. And more importantly, he considered her family. Lot broke into tears of joy before excusing herself. Elsewhere that night, rumors reached the Holy Church about a boy who had erased part of the sea in a coastal town. The information came from an orphanage child and was initially dismissed as fantasy. But a priest added that they had discovered an abnormal concentration of divine energy at the site days later. The archbishop immediately ordered an investigation. They were to search for a child with no shadow and eliminate him as a heretic. Back at the capital, business at the pharmacy was booming. Hélène joked that Pharma needed to avoid dying from overwork this time around. Pharma noticed several robed priests lingering nearby, whispering to each other. When he approached them to inquire, they glared at him with cold hostility and walked away without answering. Later, the staff discussed the strange visitors. Lot confirmed they hadn't purchased anything. Hélène noted that their robes did not resemble those of the local clergy. Lot suggested they notify the guards to keep watch. That night, as the pharmacy's nights rotated shifts, a large wagon barreled through the front gate at full speed. News reached Bruno quickly. Enraged, he vowed to track down the culprits. After ordering the knight to return to his post, Pharma prepared to rush to the pharmacy, but Bruno stopped him. He asked whether Pharma had any suspects. Veron and the mysterious robed priests immediately came to mind, but Pharma decided not to jump to conclusions. Bruno advised him to remain alert. When Pharma arrived, Cedric explained that no one had been injured, but the wagon, filled with foul-smelling waste, had plowed through the storefront and damaged their merchandise. Cedric used his minor divine arts to eliminate the stench. To keep business alive, they moved essential medicines to the cosmetics branch until repairs were complete. Soon after, Mr. Jean arrived with a group of strong laborers to help clean up the wreckage. Townsfolk lent assistance as well, reassuring Pharma and lifting morale. In the midst of the restoration effort, a distressed young woman entered the shop asking for Pharma. Her father had collapsed from heat exhaustion and was unresponsive. Pharma hesitated, his store and staff were already overwhelmed, but everyone urged him to go. He mounted a horse and followed the girl out of town. As they rode toward a remote clearing, Pharma mentally prepared treatment for dehydration and heat stroke, but when he dismounted to assess the patient, the girl vanished. He realized he had been lured into a trap. Men in white robes surrounded him from all sides. Their leader stepped forward and asked if he was the one who had erased the sea. He then introduced the group as inquisitors from the Holy Kingdom. Instantly, Pharma recalled everything Hélène had taught him about the temple. They managed the development of divine arts in children, bestowed aristocratic ranks, and even selected rulers. Their influence transcended borders. Among their agents, the inquisitors were the most feared. Elites charged with eliminating evil spirits and heretics without hesitation. Their leader identified himself as Salomon of the Grand Temple. He accused Pharma of being an evil spirit and ordered him to step backward. As Pharma complied, they cast a restraining spell to bind him, but with the slightest resistance, the spell unraveled and collapsed. They mounted their horses and launched attacks in formation. One conjured flames, forcing Pharma to erect a water shield and then remove oxygen from the immediate area, snuffing out the fire. Another conjured spears of ice, which Pharma deflected with precise counterattacks. Pharma attempted to reason with them, but Salaman ordered his men to eliminate the overpowered anomaly. Dust filled the clearing as the Inquisitors unleashed a barrage of elemental spells from every direction. When the smoke cleared, Pharma stood unharmed behind a gleaming wall of ice. He then summoned a massive ice formation, an intimidating display of power, his body glowing with divine light. He demanded they stop. He had no desire to harm anyone. His power existed for healing, not destruction. Salaman noticed the mark of Panictheos on his shoulder. Combined with the supernatural feats he had witnessed, Salaman concluded that Pharma was the incarnation of Panictheos himself. Pharma was stunned into silence. Salaman proclaimed that he had already been punished by divine will. His horse had fallen during the ambush, leaving him severely injured. Believing himself damned, Salaman prepared to take his own life as atonement. Pharma seized his arm before he could follow through. Activating the divine eye, he examined Salaman's injured leg. The limb glowed red, indicating amputation was the correct course. But when Pharma performed a reduction treatment to salvage the limb, the glow faded entirely. The treatment choice was validated. Pharma's next challenge was unexpectedly practical. He needed someone capable of performing the surgical operation. He was a pharmacist, not a surgeon. After running through every option, he arrived at a grim conclusion: there was no one else qualified. He would have to do it himself. Using his divine arts, he conjured a solid stone operating table and directed the Inquisitors to assemble a makeshift tent around it. Once the field surgery station was set up, Pharma entered the tent and explained the entire procedure to the patient. After receiving Salaman's consent, Pharma donned makeshift sterile attire and began by administering a spinal anesthetic directly to the spine to block pain. The procedure was successful. When it was over, the Inquisitors treated Pharma with reverence, as if witnessing a divine miracle firsthand. Pharma requested only one thing in return: they were to keep everything they saw a secret. Months passed. Salaman returned to Pharma's pharmacy, now fully healed, dressed formally and carrying bags of candy as offerings, as though visiting a deity during a festival. Pharma asked how he had gone from a sword-swinging inquisitor to a bishop. Salaman explained he had undergone numerous trials to earn the position, dedicating himself to a role that allowed him to be of service to Pharma. In reality, it was his way of ensuring Pharma's secret would never be exposed. Pharma found the devotion a bit unsettling. He also noticed a procession of boys in ceremonial attire. Salaman led him to a private room and presented a wand known as the treasure of the guardian deity temple, a relic rumored to possess every attribute including healing. The wand could even change shape like a mythical staff. Pharma insisted he didn't deserve such an artifact, but Salaman urged him to take it. The moment he touched it, the wand emitted a brilliant light, drawing gasps from everyone present, including Elen. Pharma offered it to her out of courtesy, but the wand passed through her hands like air. Salaman explained that the relic was not of this world, and only beings with an otherworldly nature could wield it. Pharma tested its capabilities further and asked whether it could float. Salaman recalled records indicating the possibility. Pharma released it, and the wand hovered in midair. Salaman and Elen reacted with boundless excitement at the discovery. Before departing, Salaman assured Pharma that the Grand Temple would not interfere with him again. However, the earlier wagon attack had not been their doing. Pharma still had enemies he needed to be wary of. Salaman handed him a talisman designed to suppress divine power. When Pharma activated it, the talisman restored his shadow. He was relieved, more relieved than when he received the relic. Soon after, Pharma visited the town with Blanche and Lot. While strolling through the streets, he overheard a customer asking a local pharmacy clerk why they didn't carry Pharma's products. The clerk explained that they were suspicious. The medicines were strangely effective and priced too low. The shop owner added that the Pharmacist Guild had not approved Pharma's products, so they could not be sold. Back at his own shop, Pharma considered the problem. The guild master Veron had been obstructing him from the beginning. Pharma half-joked that the solution might be to create a new guild entirely. Elen laughed at the absurdity, unaware that Pharma was not joking at all. Meanwhile, at the Pharmacist Guild headquarters, Veron and his cadre of stubborn traditionalists plotted how to sabotage Pharma now that he had recovered from the earlier attack. Veron speculated that Pharma rebuilt and restocked thanks to divine arts or his father's wealth. He ranted that Pharma was ruining their business model and decided the guild needed to handle him. He also banned guild members from entering Pharma's store, threatening to revoke their licenses if they disobeyed. Not long after, a desperate man pounded on a doctor's door carrying his gravely ill daughter. Pharma happened to walk by and offered to examine her. The man refused. He was a guild member, and guild members were forbidden from associating with Pharma. The pharmacist hesitated, torn between guild loyalty and saving his daughter. But in the end, worry won over fear. He changed his mind and followed Pharma to the pharmacy. Pharma quietly led them through a side entrance. The man assumed it was a special passage for commoners to avoid disturbing noble clients. Inside, Pharma handed him a clean nose mask. Only then did the pharmacist realize Pharma was protecting other patients from his daughter's illness. His respect for the boy began to shift. Pharma began by asking thorough questions. The girl's age, diet, symptoms, environment, recent meals, details no local pharmacist had ever bothered with. He even took measurements for dosage calculations since she was unconscious. When the puzzled man asked why, Pharma explained that children required precise dosing based on size and weight. Afterward, Pharma used the divine eye to examine Marie, leaving the man both confused and fascinated. Pharma revealed the diagnosis, a severe cold, nothing more. The pharmacist was stunned. He had witnessed multiple alarming symptoms and feared something far worse. Pharma clarified that this was a cold caused by a virus, a concept the man didn't fully grasp. But he understood the instructions well enough. The medicine must be inhaled, not swallowed. He left them to rest. By evening, Marie's condition had already improved dramatically. Pharma escorted them home and offered to check on her again if symptoms worsened. At the door, the man braced himself for a noble's outrageous bill, only for Pharma to charge the price of a large loaf of bread. The pharmacist was speechless. At home, his wife panicked when she heard he had gone to the parallel world pharmacy. But he explained everything, Pharma's kindness, skill, and the dangerous guild politics he now understood. He confessed that Pharma's methods could save countless lives. If he could learn even a fraction of Pharma's knowledge, he could change the course of medicine, but doing so meant defying the guild. His wife reminded him of their debts, but she could see his resolve. Tears welled as she realized he had already made his choice. At the next guild meeting, Veron bragged about destroying all cosmetics his wife had bought from Pharma, earning disapproving murmurs. Someone whispered that even a bishop was visiting Pharma's shop regularly. That made Veron twitch. Suddenly, Veron demanded Pierre's opinion since Pierre's shop was closest to Pharma's devil's nest. Pierre stood, took a breath, and asked a simple question. Had any of them ever seen Pharma's medicine with their own eyes? Every man in the room fell silent. The answer was no. Pierre explained what he had witnessed: fairness, affordable pricing, and advanced care. Instead of accepting this truth, Veron exploded, insisting Pharma must be a demon using forbidden divine arts. He ranted about nobles neglecting him in the past, about losing his child because divine power had failed them, and how Pharma's existence humiliated the entire guild. He demanded action against Pharma. Pierre urged them to learn instead of hiding behind outdated practices. Medicine couldn't advance if they clung to vague traditions and superstition. For a moment, his words started to resonate, until Veron cut him off and expelled him from the guild meeting. That afternoon, Pharma found Pierre sitting outside his vandalized shop. Pierre explained that he had defended Pharma at the guild, and this was his punishment. He would have to leave the country if he wanted to continue practicing pharmacy at all. Pharma told him he didn't have to go anywhere. The day before, he had officially established a new guild, one dedicated to scientific medicine, fair treatment, and affordable care. He invited Pierre to become its first member. Pierre broke down in tears of relief and gratitude. Soon after, Pierre reopened his pharmacy, now proudly partnered with Pharma, and stocked some of Pharma's medicines. When he lifted the shutters on opening day, he was shocked to find a massive crowd already waiting outside. His daughter Marie encouraged him to give it everything he had. Around this time, the narrative recalls a tragedy from years past. A brilliant physician named Camus, celebrated for his medical breakthroughs, was arrested by the temple despite his contributions to the kingdom. The flashback continued. In his final moments, the brilliant physician Camus stared up at a young Bruno. The boy asked why he resorted to human experimentation. Camus spoke calmly about the cycle of life. People are born, people die, and medicine must advance in between. If no one pushed boundaries, nothing would change. Before he could finish, the nightmare ended. Bruno awoke in a cold sweat, haunted by memories of genius and tragedy intertwined. At breakfast, Pharma noticed Bruno was strangely quiet and asked what troubled him. Bruno waved the question away. Breakfast was not the time to resurrect Camus's ghost. A servant arrived with a letter from Pal de Médicis, Bruno's eldest son. Their mother's eyes lit with joy, only to dim moments later as Bruno read that Pal's return home would be delayed. Blanche and Lot tried to lighten the mood, praising Pal as a prodigy and naturally praising Pharma by association. After breakfast, Bruno took Pharma to his office. He reminded him that the St. Fleuve Fair was approaching, a massive month-long event attracting merchants from across the world. This year, however, complications loomed. Bruno had received alarming reports of a mysterious epidemic that had ravaged a neighboring colonial island. According to Pal's letter, over 4,000 settlers had perished. Pharma's expression tightened. Bruno added that the research team sent to investigate had also died, indicating the disease was contagious. Though the outbreak had ended on the island, merchant goods from the colony were still being shipped to the fair, and they would arrive through the port in Bruno's newly acquired domain. Even worse, all official documents and research data concerning the epidemic had been burned to prevent panic. The lack of information terrified Pharma far more than the disease itself. Pal's report described the symptoms of the first researcher: high fever, violent vomiting, severe headaches, swollen lymph nodes in the neck, followed by death 7 days later. The second researcher died faster, skin turning black in patches. Pharma felt a chill run down his spine. He dreaded the obvious conclusion but needed more evidence. Bruno read the final portion of the report. The researchers had used a newly invented device to observe the pathogen, a microscope designed by an unnamed individual. Pharma nearly choked. That unnamed inventor was him. They had used his microscope to glimpse the culprit. Pharma immediately requested that Pal send sketches from the researchers' notes. Meanwhile, at the palace, the Empress held a council meeting. Officials reported that the kingdom's mortality rate had dropped dramatically, over 30%, ever since Pharma opened his pharmacy. Praise echoed throughout the chamber. The Empress suggested rewarding him, even proposing a promotion to Archduke. Mary politely reminded her that such a rank could not be bestowed upon a minor. As the meeting continued, the Empress considered a more personal concern. If Pharma truly carried some otherworldly being within him, how could she ensure he lived freely rather than as a tool? Back at the pharmacy, Pharma explained the epidemic crisis to Hélène, who immediately suggested canceling the St. Fleuve Fair entirely. Lot then arrived with a letter from Pal. Pharma tore it open. One look at the sketches sent his face pale. The drawings depicted a bacillus with a unique shape and tail. It was Yersinia pestis. There was no room for doubt, the epidemic was the Black Deaths. Pharma immediately dispatched personnel to the port town to prepare for quarantine. They vowed to begin containment measures immediately. Once they left, Pharma and Hélène went straight to Bruno. They informed him that the epidemic was most likely the Black Death. Bruno confessed he had come to the same conclusion after cross-referencing medical texts. Pharma recalled that in the 14th century, the bubonic plague held a mortality rate near 70%, sweeping across continents like wildfire. Together, they outlined the precautionary measures already in motion to prevent an outbreak. After reviewing the quarantine plan, Bruno emphasized the severity of the situation. If the Black Death reached the capital, the empire's prosperity would collapse. They had no traditional means of stopping it. Pharma responded that he had already formulated a new drug and sent it for packaging, but insisted that containment remained the priority, because for now, he was the only one capable of producing the medicine. With that urgency, they petitioned the Empress to implement cargo inspections at the capital gates and requested permission to eliminate the disease vectors, fleas and rats. The Empress immediately granted the request. Bruno thanked her for acting decisively, but she replied that she trusted Pharma completely. Later that day, Pharma showed Pierre his newly built compound microscope, explaining that with it, physicians no longer needed to risk close exposure to pathogens. He also informed him that the plague medicine had been prepared and stockpiled for free emergency distribution. After making arrangements, Pharma left the capital in Pierre's care. Meanwhile, the Empress received logistical updates regarding the St. Fleuve Fair. Officials assured her that the new checkpoints had not obstructed trade operations. Bishop Salomon had dispatched priests to assist with purification rituals. She ordered everyone to keep the epidemic confidential. If word leaked, rival nations would exploit the chaos. As Pharma and Hélène prepared to depart for the port, Hélène noticed his anxiety. She reminded him that Lot was cheering for him, and that gave him enough confidence to climb aboard. Upon arriving at the harbor, Pharma observed the ships anchored in the bay. One unchecked vessel could destroy everything they had worked to build. They met with the advance team stationed in the port town, who reported that all incoming ships had been detained for inspection. Even vessels that passed were undergoing cargo purification as a precaution. Pharma and Alen joined the inspection effort and boarded a ship with a particularly impatient merchant. They coordinated with the ship's physician and began examining the cargo and crew below deck. Nothing suggested plague contamination. However, Pharma diagnosed the sailors with scurvy and provided them with vitamin-rich prescriptions. When they moved to the next vessel, the sailors erupted into arguments, fighting for inspection priority to avoid further delays. The merchant continued throwing tantrums, and Alen nearly reached for her wand to calm the situation until a thunderous cannon blast echoed across the port. The shots came from the Empire's Scarlet Navy, and leading the fleet was none other than Mr. Jean, the same kindly old man who once bought candy at Pharma's shop. Except now he stood as a naval commander in full regalia. He announced to the entire harbor that Pharma was a royal pharmacist and the son of an archduke, stunning the merchant sailors. He declared that any ship that dared insult or disrespect Pharma would be sent to the bottom of the sea. Pharma's team later regrouped with Commander Jean, whose greatest concern at the moment was restocking his beloved candy supply. The sailors explained that ever since they began eating Pharma's vitamin-rich candies, they had stopped suffering from scurvy. Pharma smiled, genuinely happy that a simple confection had improved naval health. As inspection continued, Alen remained tense. The threat of the Black Death lingered like a shadow. She urged everyone to remain diligent. At that moment, Acting Governor Adam rushed in with grim news. Several residents of Estak village had fallen ill and died exhibiting high fevers. Worse, a group of sailors had bypassed inspection and fled to that very village. The outbreak was spreading rapidly. Pharma prepared to depart immediately to suppress the outbreak. Alen tried to stop him, insisting the situation was too dangerous. Pharma countered that her fear would not save anyone. She had tools, personnel, and authority. She needed to use them, not panic. Alen hated being called out, but Pharma was right. With that, he invoked his divine arts through the wand and launched into the sky. While flying, Pharma's mind raced through treatment plans, so much so that he struck a bird midair and nearly plummeted. He managed to steady himself, only to barrel toward a massive tree. He closed his eyes in terror, but instead of colliding, he passed through it. The wand possessed phasing capabilities. Upon arriving at Estak village, Pharma found villagers fleeing. He begged them to stay, but they refused to risk infection. His sudden appearance out of thin air only convinced them he was an evil spirit who had cursed the village. They brandished weapons in panic. With no choice, Pharma tapped into the wand. A barrier of thick ice encircled the entire village, sealing it off. The villagers' fear evaporated into shock. Pharma declared he was a royal pharmacist, displaying his official badge. Realizing they had misjudged him, the villagers dropped to their knees and begged him to save them. Inside, Pharma laid out quarantine zones, one for severe cases, one for mild cases, and one for the uninfected. The villagers assumed he planned to burn the sick. Pharma corrected them. It was triage, prioritizing those who required immediate attention. Meanwhile at sea, the Scarlet Navy spotted a vessel approaching the port. It was likely the ship that fled inspection. It waved distress flags, a sign of infection. As it neared, a scout reported that the entire crew was dead. Commander Jean decided boarding would be suicide. They prepared to sink the vessel and all contaminated goods on board. As the crew loaded the cannons, Commander Jean remembered Pharma's vow to save everyone. But the ship had evaded inspection and now threatened to unleash the Black Death upon the Empire. There was no choice. He whispered a prayer for the dead and gave the order. The cannons fired, and unlike you, they didn't miss. Elsewhere in a research institute, a group of men complained about needing extra hands for ongoing medical work. When an older woman volunteered, they declined after a single glance. She was known by the nickname Reaper of Black Mold, and she was nearing retirement. They saw no reason to involve her. In her office, her assistant addressed her as Casper, but she sharply corrected him. The institute researchers dismissed the older woman entirely. Not only was she nearing retirement, they argued, but her field, molds and microorganisms, was irrelevant to modern medicine. They brushed off her expertise as a relic of the past. Resigned to the inevitability of being phased out, Casper returned to her office preparing for quiet irrelevance. Moments later, someone knocked and summoned her to the president's office. Meanwhile, in Estak village, Pharma entered the first isolation building. When he opened the door, the men inside questioned why a child had entered a quarantine zone. But another patient intervened, explaining that he had seen Pharma alongside Bishop Salomon not long ago. He declared that Pharma was the incarnation of Panic Theos, immediately silencing any hostility. Once authority was established, the men admitted they were struggling to identify who was infected and who was. Pharma instructed them to administer medication to everyone, while he personally conducted diagnoses. Activating his divine eye, he examined each patient. When the light beneath the skin faded, he confirmed that treatment was possible. One fortunate man only had a cold and was cleared to leave the isolation center. Pharma accelerated his recovery using his wand's healing functions. But it quickly became evident that Pharma could not handle the outbreak alone, not while contaminated cargo was still headed toward the capital. After distributing the medication, the men asked for the next course of action. Pharma ordered them to leave immediately and intercept the contaminated shipments before they reached the city. Back at the port, Elen and her inspection team completed their rounds. Despite the progress, she warned her subordinates not to grow complacent. She sighed, admitting Pharma would have handled the situation more smoothly and wishing she'd learned more from him. She lamented that unlike Pharma, she had no special powers. Her assistant disagreed, pointing out that while Pharma might be more accurate, Elen conducted full inspections faster than anyone. She thanked the heavens she wasn't just another incompetent side character. At the institute, the president who had requested Casper was revealed to be Bruno. Casper assumed he was about to terminate her research funding and cut her off mid-sentence, thanking him for tolerating her work this long and accepting her supposed forced retirement. Bruno stopped her from spiraling further. He explained that he was not firing her, in fact, he had an extremely important assignment for her. Casper's eyes widened as he spoke of a job that could save countless lives. Bruno handed her a handwritten note containing instructions. She was to extract a medicinal compound from a microorganism. When she asked which genius authored such instructions, Bruno replied that the identity was confidential and instead asked if she could carry out the task. Casper revealed that she already had such microorganisms cultured in her lab, samples she had collected long ago and dismissed as useless. She showed Bruno a specimen she believed held no value. Bruno announced that the institute would allocate full resources toward producing a new medicine, with Casper in charge. Overwhelmed, she vowed to do her best. Back in Estek village, Pharma explained to the mayor that some critically ill patients could not be saved. Even so, the mayor thanked him for minimizing casualties. Pharma stated that to prevent further spread, the villagers needed to remain inside the ice quarantine for 2 weeks. Before departing, he warned them not to touch any animals, no matter the circumstances. He said farewell to the accompanying priest, then mounted his wand and flew into the sky. Pharma hadn't flown far when he spotted smoke on the horizon. He descended and found the priests he had sent ahead burning a contaminated cart. The merchants responsible had been captured but refused to cooperate. Pharma warned them that the Black Death was coming for them as well. This wasn't a matter of profit but survival. Eventually they confessed. There had originally been 4 carts, one of which contained squirrels. The animals had been imported from the island that the epidemic had wiped out. It was now undeniable. These merchants were responsible for spreading the plague into the empire. They also admitted they had been traveling with 40 workers and 4 holy knights, an alarming detail. The priests questioned why merchants would require elite noble escorts. Pharma connected the dots. The holy knights must have intentionally forced the epidemic into the empire. He recalled that the empress' illness months earlier had also been suspected to be intentional. Someone was engineering these outbreaks. There was a mastermind. The merchants demanded that they be treated as a right. The priests were ready to execute them on the spot, but Pharma refused. Whatever their crimes, a physician treats the sick. Meanwhile in the capital, Bruno reported the outbreak to the Empress. He warned that the rogue caravan could reach the city in 1 or 2 days. The Empress ordered the gates fortified immediately. Canceling the Saint Fleuve fair outright would cause political chaos, so she reinforced defenses instead. The next day, Lot took to the streets selling protective masks to every merchant she could charm into buying. At the same time, Pierre received new samples from the northern gate to inspect. One of the samples tested positive for the Black Death. Suddenly, an attack erupted outside the city gate. Guards slammed the gates shut, but the Holy Knights destroyed them with ease and cut through the defenders. Despite the danger, Pierre fought his way to the dosage tents to ensure the medical stockpile was safe. There, he witnessed the worst possible scenario. The Holy Knights unveiled a cage filled with white squirrels, plague vectors, and released them into the capital. Using divine arts, they tossed the animals into alleyways and marketplaces like biological grenades. Pierre understood instantly. He ordered the alarm rung to warn the entire city. Bells thundered across the capital. A messenger burst into the royal hall reporting that Holy Knights from Netherlandia had invaded. The Empress asked how many. When told there were only 5, she sat down, confused as to why they had not already been subdued. Bruno proposed the unthinkable. The knights were not here to conquer, they were here to infect. The Empress was stunned. Why would Netherlandia destroy a long-standing alliance only to attack with 5 men? She added that their ruler had just died, so a full national conspiracy was unlikely. Bruno argued that the operation required someone with specialized medical knowledge, someone who understood pathogens, vectors, and incubation. He suggested the culprit might be a brilliant pharmacist they once expelled for heretical human experimentation. The man had been captured by the Inquisitors, stripped of his divine power, and cast out as a commoner. Bruno finally spoke the name out loud, Camus. He cursed himself for not killing him when he had the chance, despite knowing the man's intentions. Meanwhile, the invading Holy Knights barricaded themselves behind an ice wall to avoid being roasted by defensive fire spells. Once they had an opening, they broke formation and overpowered the city guards. Before they could escape, Bishop Salaman descended upon the scene. With a single command, he immobilized the knights and invoked his divine authority to strip them of their powers. Unworthy divine arts users had no place in his kingdom. Elsewhere, Lot trembled in fear but still wanted to help. Cedric reassured her, telling her to stay calm and not rush out blindly. Pharma soon arrived at the bell tower. From above, he used the divine eye to assess the spread of infection. White squirrels scurried across rooftops and streets, carrying plague vectors with them. Realizing the scale of contamination, he descended and met up with Bruno. Together, they proceeded to the courtyard, where a captured Holy Knight was being interrogated. The knights insisted they knew nothing of the Black Death. They claimed they followed orders because Camus held their homeland hostage, threatening to kill thousands at once if they disobeyed. They even argued that Camus must have been possessed by an evil spirit. When Bruno appeared, the knights fell silent. Their bodies were burned afterward to prevent secondary infection. As Pharma considered mass-producing more medicine, he noticed a shadowy figure perched atop his pharmacy roof. Lot headed there as well, assuming it was safe since the bells had stopped ringing. Cedric opened the door for her and noticed something odd: the front entrance hadn't been locked. Lot had already gone upstairs. She sensed something strange and looked around just as Cedric entered. Relief washed over her too soon. From behind Cedric, Camus emerged and stabbed him before turning his attention to Lot. Pharma and Bruno rushed in moments later and found the two bleeding out. Bruno immediately attacked to draw Camus away. His ice spells shattered uselessly. Camus revealed his withered face and gloated as they fought. Pharma tried to identify the poison Camus used, but there was no time for textbook diagnoses. He was forced to guess mid-battle. Bruno's spells were countered one after another, and Camus unleashed his corrupt divine powers. Pharma finally recognized the first toxin, aconite, but a second poison complicated the symptoms. By the time Pharma identified it, Bruno was being overwhelmed. Camus seized a vial of volatile chemicals and gave a speech about survival, that only those strong enough to endure poison deserved to live. He prepared to test his concoction, but Pharma eliminated the contents on the spot. Camus's composure snapped. Pharma closed in and landed a rapid strike to the skull, stunning him. Camus demanded Pharma join him, arguing that together they could purge humanity. Pharma refused. Using his right hand, he delivered a decisive blow that launched Camus across the room. Before the fallen man could react, Pharma followed with another strike, pinning him to the ground. With the wand, he purged the evil spirit influencing Camus. A radiant rainbow light burst into the sky. Bishop Salaman saw it from afar and immediately understood. The purification was complete, plague, poison, and malice had been cleansed. Cedric and Lot regained consciousness shortly after, and Lot embraced Cedric from behind in relief. With the crisis resolved, Pharma's team treated the few infected citizens while Alen successfully prevented an outbreak at the port. The plague medicine was distributed to the public as a precaution. Even Veron, the guild master who resented Pharma most, secretly accepted a dose through his wife, clinging to pride until the end. 2 months later, the Empress officially announced the end of the Black Death pandemic. The parallel world pharmacy reopened, and its first customers of the new era were Commander Jean and Bishop Salaman, followed soon by crowds of eager citizens, bringing the anime recap to an end. Wang Ling was born with power that could rewrite time and space itself. From the moment he walked out of the womb on his own, he was already beyond gods. Yet despite having limitless strength, he wanted only one thing in life: a quiet day and a bowl of crispy ramen noodles. That illusion of peace ended the moment an S-rank frog calamity attacked the city and made him drop his meal. In that single moment of anger, Wang erased the monster with one casual move, then chose to hide his power forever and live as a normal student. Years later, on his first day of high school, two senior bullies immediately targeted him. They mocked his seemingly low spirit force value and demanded he hand over all his money. Before Wang could react, a streak of fire crashed down from the sky. Sun Rong, the academy's most popular student, descended with divine grace, sending the thugs fleeing in terror. She promised to protect Wang, unaware he needed no protection. Later, the principal gathered the student body for the Spirit Force entrance exam, declaring that only the strongest would enter the elite class. A student named Kuk Xuan stepped up first. Inside the testing chamber, he faced the target, a spirit incarnation of the giant frog king. Terrified by the beast's aura, he faltered. He threw a weak punch, but the impact only proved he was destined for absolute mediocrity. One by one, students failed miserably until Chen Ko stepped forward. He unleashed his dormant energy, striking the beast with enough force to score over 900, securing his elite spot despite being knocked back. Sun Rong followed, rushing the beast with incredible speed. She landed a devastating blow, repelling the monster and shattering records with a score exceeding 2,000 points. Wang Ling was the final candidate. He planned to suppress his output to appear average. However, as he stepped into the water, the frog spirit sensed a familiar, traumatic frequency. It remembered the original body's destruction, the day it tried to incinerate the mage leader, only to be annihilated by the wind pressure of Wang's kick for interrupting his lunch. The beast trembled, recalling the sheer terror of that moment. Paralyzed by the memory of that specific background music, the frog froze. Wang pretended to struggle, feigning a difficult battle. But as he closed the distance, the mere passive energy from his arm destroyed the testing equipment. The signal died. The smoke cleared to reveal the frog unconscious on the floor while the scoreboard glitched, unable to display a number high enough to quantify Wang's truly infinite power. The entire school watched in stunned silence as the system completely failed. However, he did not even physically touch the frog. And when the frog started disintegrating, Sun realized something was off, while Wang noticed it was playing dead to avoid feeling his pain. The examiner congratulated him on being admitted into the class of the elite. When the first class began, the teacher showed them the spirits that they would bring out from other dimensions using their force level. Chen decided to show off his powers. After everyone clowned on him, Sun summoned a stray dog but wondered just how much power she needed for an actual spirit beast. The teacher wondered why Wang's lonely self was just sulking in the corner, so he decided to also give it a try. But when he felt all the aliens surrounding him, a giant explosion went off and the frog from the exam wondered why he was seeing his ugly face once again. To save everyone, the teacher cast Sun's dog toward the frog, transforming him into a puppy. Sun then asked him if he liked peanut butter. However, Wang knew how this would end and tried sneaking out of class. After all, he had been alone his entire life because even when his father waited for him to be born, he saw the nurse leaving the exploded delivery room in tears. However, his son was not dead, and he saw Wang had walked out of his mother's womb like a titan. Every single day, he would sit and read the minds of his parents as they would constantly lie to each other and bothered him with all their arguments. To save their marriage, he used his infinite brain cells to think of all the billion outcomes in this world and decided to wed himself right in front of them. This was how his accident saved his parents' marriage. And as days passed, he was capable of manipulating gravity itself. But by the age of 6, he had already gained the ability to destroy calamity-ranked monsters. So his father began experimenting on him until he developed a secret seal to hide Wang's limitless powers. But even then, it was not enough to prevent him from nearly breaking the bowl by just touching it. So his mother would constantly give him her golden orbs to suppress his spiritual powers. And even though his parents loved him, they wished to find a way to help him live an ordinary life. Because even for simple things like blowing out his candles, he burned down their entire home. And when he was 10, his friends nearly touching him knocked them all out cold. For the first time in 10 years, he realized that his parents had been actually struggling to give him a good life. So until they found a way to suppress his powers, he decided to avoid anything that would stir up his emotions, except for ramen noodles. At school, he saw that ramen was on sale today, and a man bought the entire store, saying that he would gladly give them all they wanted as long as they vote for Sun Rong as president. All of the guys were angry that she would stoop that low for votes, but Wang told her that he would give her 5 of his votes for the 5 crispy ramen noodle packs, and she wondered why his plain face was the only one helping her. After receiving the noodles, all the other guys realized that they could get free food by just voting for her. But Chen swore that he would beat her, seeing how everyone fell for her trap. She cast her art of seduction to control everyone's minds, but realized that Wang was missing from among them. The only thing left over was his golden pill, as he wanted to pay her back for the noodles she gave him. When class started, Sun noticed that Wang was still unaffected by her spell, but even after trying to overpower him, he wondered if she ever got the pill. As he signaled for her to give him the golden pill back, she thought he wanted her to eat the golden sphere. So she decided to eat it to increase her spiritual powers. At that moment, he realized she was doomed and her body started feeling like it had fallen from the sky. The spell of seduction broke away from everyone, and the teacher called Sun to come up and demonstrate her art of seduction. But as she walked forward, she slipped on a can and nearly fell. But Wang had to show off that he was the protagonist of this anime. However, he was not interested and just dropped her body to the floor, breaking the seduction spell off everyone. Before the class was over, the teacher announced that Chen Kao was the president of their grade. And as Wang walked away, he knew that those gestures were definitely a secret technique of unleashing some overpowered abilities. Later that night, Sun wondered why Wang's plain face destroyed her spell after supporting her at the shop, but wished he would leave her mind already. The following morning, Chen had brought his giant cauldron for the pill refinery test and thought that Sun would definitely fall for his giant cauldron. However, his friend knew that he was definitely overcompensating for something. She arrived in her limo, somehow accompanied by an entire band serenading her entrance along with 30 bodyguards. With a single glance, Wang saw she had been seduced by him, so he used all of his gigachad energy to come and brush her face. But he broke all laws of physics and snapped the status effect out of reality. They wondered if this was the new red pill guru method he was practicing, and Sun collapsed after the Riz Lord destroyed her ability to stand. At class that day, the teacher speedran the way to create a golden pill. The entire class remained frozen, utterly clueless regarding how they would pass this impossible alchemy assignment. Chen began frantically shoveling dirt, metaphorically preparing a grave to bury Wang Ling, while Wang simply utilized a standard kitchen microwave to refine his raw ore. Hao questioned how he could ever hope to compete with such absurdity, yet he proudly displayed his own superior magical furnace. Sun Rong gazed at the high-tier device with envy, wishing she could possess something of that caliber one day. However, the moment she directed her attention toward another boy, Chen's jealousy spiked, causing his unstable cauldron to violently explode directly in his face. The humiliated simp fled the room in tears. With the disruption gone, the teacher announced a mandatory 7-hour wait for the ores to finish refining. The moment the instructor exited, Wang's spirit dog prepared to devour Hao's cauldron. Wang Ling managed to intervene just before absolute disaster struck. Suddenly, the frog leaped out the window, forcing Hao to chase it down, but this was merely a calculated ploy to lure the ugly boy away. When Hao turned back, he found Wang Ling standing directly behind him. Terrified by the stealthy approach, he begged for mercy. Meanwhile, Chen continued running, weeping not just over his romantic failure, but because he knew his father would execute him for destroying the sacred family treasure and failing to secure first place. Back at the scene, Wang Ling departed with the furnace, but Hao, confused why Wang was stealing it, aimed his paintball weapon at him. Wang calmly insisted he wanted no trouble. Hao demanded an explanation before he blasted Wang into an isekai world. Just then, Chen's mind fractured completely. He hallucinated Sun Rong running toward her new daddy. Inner demons erupted, branding him a pathetic loser as his crush walked away with Wang. Determined to eliminate the evil separating them, Chen charged back into the fray. Hao declared it was over for Wang's worthless face and fired his poison weapon. Wang dodged at the last microsecond, and Chen inadvertently swallowed every drop of Hao's sticky liquid. Hao screamed in sheer horror at the accidental intimacy. They dragged Chen's twitching body back into the classroom, wondering if he would survive ingesting that much lethal poison. Realizing they faced expulsion if he died, Hao begged Wang to create an antidote immediately. They scrambled to gather ingredients and fired up the cauldron, setting a 4-hour timer. Panic set in when they remembered the instructor would return in only 2 hours. To make matters worse, the frog returned, attempting to eat the cauldron again. Hao released a magic seal to cast the beast aside. However, when he checked the furnace, they realized the frog's mystical fire had miraculously accelerated the refining process, saving them all from certain failure. They decided to put Froggy down, forcing the spirit to release his energy. Wang questioned why the creature kept such power hidden. Froggy explained that his ability to manipulate timelines would inevitably destroy the entire world, but both of them knew they could use it to their advantage. Once the antidote was complete, they forced the poor dog to ingest the poison to test the pill on him. They watched the reaction closely, showing absolutely no concern for the animal's safety during the dangerous and highly volatile procedure. They tried feeding Chen the pill, but Hao heard the instructor's heavy footsteps, so he ran outside to try and delay them. However, the teacher was not interested in his tactics. When she entered the room, the teacher was ready to see whether his furnace actually refined any spirit orbs. Hao begged her not to expel him. She saw that he had actually refined one of the orbs, and Hao realized that Wang sacrificed his own pill for his dear friend. But just then it was his turn, and the teacher screamed at him for creating explosives. Seeing how Wang replaced Chen's orb into his microwave and sacrificed his own grade for his friends made him realize that Wang was the greatest friend in this world. But he did not realize that Wang actually did nothing, because when washing the furnace the pill had simply been there all along. They had cooked it without either one of them knowing. His microwave was as useless as he was, but nothing was as useless as the cauldron carrying Chen except maybe for Chen's face. By the time he woke up he saw that his furnace was repaired and Hao told him to thank Wang for all his hard work, sparking a bromance between the two new best buddies. When school was over the next day, Sun began approaching her useless, ugly, and pathetic prey, but instead of being the hunter she was actually the one being hunted. Without any hesitation she asked Wang if he wanted to go on a date tomorrow, but Wang stared at her with the same worthless face as always. At the same time the hunters were given the order to shoot Sun, but as soon as they shot, Wang deflected their shots back with a single stare. The poor assassins fell down. The teacher called Wang out of the class and she wondered why he was avoiding her. At the same time, the snipers decided to fall back at their boss's command and Froggy saw everything from a distance. Sun thought that Wang said yes to her date when he was just saying yes to the teacher, so she was excited to go on a date with him tomorrow. The student body questioned how his repulsive, worthless mug secured a date, for if a wretch like him could acquire girls, why did every female flee from them in sheer terror? A seductive bunny girl sensed that events were becoming truly interesting. Inside the main office, the principal ordered the teacher to depart right away. The principal introduced himself as Ju, the witness who observed his capacity to vanquish the giant frog all those many years prior. He dropped to his knees and begged Wang to become his honored master. However, Wang unleashed 50% of his memory erasure magic spell. Once he was finally solitary, Froggy informed him regarding the assassins. As he slept, he endured recurring nightmares regarding Sun's absolutely crazy behavior. Yet when he rose from bed wearing his bunny suit, he spotted Sun waiting outside the window with her full army, and he wished that he would simply perish right then and there. Neither of his parents would typically agree to this arrangement, but they believed their son would never actually bring a living girl home. Consequently, they begged him to carry some protection. His father questioned how Wang was conceived when he always utilized strict protection, but his mother told him not to worry about specific details. Checking his phone, he saw friends wishing him the absolute greatest night of romantic plot development. Without even realizing it, his parents shoved him outside where Sun stated he could do anything he desired in the back seat. As they drove away, the assassins continued tailing the vehicle. Sun informed him that she was taking him directly to the Heavenly Paradise Carnival grounds. That entire castle was constructed for Sun to spend time there with her beloved, and she confessed it was her first time visiting this specific location. Wang wondered why he was stuck with her ugly self, but she laughed because his face was even worse. Upon arrival, she told the guards to leave immediately because Wang was stronger than all of them combined. Yet 5 minutes later, all guards were neutralized by the assassins standing before a large prophecy wall. Sun dragged him to discover the future of their relationship, and the assassin fired a bullet at that instant. However, Wang slowed time to locate the bullet and caught it with his mouth, launching it back at the gun and sending the man flying backward. She wondered what neurological disorder he possessed, but he flashed her memory away. She paused, and she forgot seeing anything at all happen. The assassins wondered why these guns possessed much more recoil than CSGO. As they glided across the steel while being followed, Wang exploded the assassins trailing directly behind them. Wang attempts to procure a gift for her, but the situation spirals. He causes a stack of heavy logs to collapse directly upon them, wiping her memory to hide the error. Just as they prepare to board another ride, the assassin leader snaps his fingers. A massive stone boulder plummets from above, crushing the ground, though they survive unscathed. By the time night falls, the shadowing assassins are left baffled, cursing the inexplicable misfortune plaguing their mission. Sun asks Wang if he would accompany her on the Ferris wheel to watch the fireworks display. He agrees to the request, internally hoping this ride will finally grant him a fleeting moment of peace alongside her. However, the assassins pursue, hopping into the gondola behind them. Zhuge senses his master is in grave peril and immediately signals for backup. As the couple ascends high into the air, vibrant fireworks begin detonating across the distant horizon. While Wang is momentarily distracted, the killers aim guns at him and Sun, forcing the pair to sit intimately close together. Despite the lethal danger aimed at his head, Wang feels relief that Sun's incessantly loud mouth has finally been silenced for a few seconds. Sun begs the gunman to release her friend. Hearing her call him friend, she breaks down crying, pleading for Wang to flee and save himself. Instead, Wang stands, eyes gleaming with power. He unleashes a telekinetic force, violently hurling one comrade out of the cabin. When the remaining killer begs for his life, Wang ignores the plea, summoning a colossal phoenix from the sky to strike the man down instantly. Amidst the explosions, Wang extracts a promise of secrecy. He utilizes his full power to seal Sun's memories of the night deep within rather than erasing them. It is the first time he has ever desired for someone to know his true self, marking the genesis of their new relationship. The fireworks continue to illuminate the dark sky in the distance. The next day at school, the teacher warns Sun that the hitmen who attacked her in the park survived and are concocting a new plan. However, when Sun claims she has no memory of the attack, Zhuyi arrives, boasting that he personally eliminated the threat. The previous night after the couple returned from the Ferris wheel, Wang watched Sun depart before casting a spell on Zhuyi, implanting false memories that he defeated the hitmen. Zhuyi presents a letter revealing that assassins intend to invade the school grounds to capture Sun. With a sharp snap, the school gate seals shut as soldiers barricade the premises. Inside the schoolyard, however, a golden phase ninja named Zhu Fang bursts out from the earth. He knocks out a security guard with a rubber chicken before brutally pounding another. In the corridor, a golden phase ninja named Sighing arrived, blasting the opposition straight out the window with a powerful gust. The instructor evaded a lethal chalk projectile that punctured the concrete wall, cracking the solid structure like a heavy sledgehammer strike. Looming over the intruder, the teacher declared he would crush the assassin beneath his heel like a common, insignificant insect. Elsewhere, Wang received a notification regarding a prize, a complimentary pack of crispy noodles. Intent on claiming his reward, he exited. Back in the hallway, the teacher wove around attacks, though the ninja remained determined to prove his lethal worth in combat. Sighing hurled a weapon, then another. Activating a spell, he triggered the projectiles to expand rapidly and detonate in violent explosions. The teacher effortlessly crushed a spiked sphere, mocking Sighing as a worthless, disappointing amateur for bringing such useless toys into battle. As the instructor advanced, the ninja cast a toxic burst to cover his retreat. He fled, slamming into the door just as Wang stepped out, ignoring the collision to walk away. Meanwhile, Zhu Fang neutralized another security team. Attempting to extract, he encountered the school dog standing quietly in his escape path. He attempted to pet the creature, but it bit his hand. He flung the animal away, only to realize his spiritual energy had been completely drained. Instantly, his physical form withered. The dog transformed, revealing a massive green frog towering directly